Hello, good morning, and welcome. This is your election headquarters, and this is Newsfile. We'll give you an hour extra. The elections are over. Not exactly over yet. Even though elections are won at the polling stations, some results remain to be known. Whether some MPs have won or they have not. Some are being disputed already. So we will be checking the matters arising after last Saturday, the disputed results, the acts of vandalism, violence on the streets, the acts of arson, beating people, including priests, wrongly, and the transition. As you know, yesterday, two different statements were issued by the two different transition teams. The transition team members of John Dramani Mahama, the president-elect, and that of His Excellency the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. One said, important matters, including payment of huge sums of money and recruitment, ought to be halted, so to speak, and referred to the committee for resolution. That was under the hand of Felix Kwachi Ofosu, who speaks for that team. Then Fatima Abubakar, Minister for Information, issued one as spokesperson for the president's side of the team, debunking those claims. As far as they are concerned, those recruitments, those payments are legal. There are not illegalities about them. Therefore, there's no point for any reference. And the caution to public officers ought to be disregarded, she said. The Electoral Commission also yesterday was compelled by circumstances to issue a statement halting recollation of presidential and parliamentary election results in some of the contested constituencies, where the EC was clear that the massing up of party supporters had made it impossible for the collation to be done and the declarations duly made. So it halted it. The NDC says it's secured an injunction against the process because it's completely illegal, unlawful. So it's been stopped. What happens? We have a team that will take us through all these matters. We will understand the big falls and the gains by the NDC, surprising gain and complete dissemination of the NPP in these elections. Results that they never expected. We'll begin first with an exclusive. We'll be right back. Welcome back. And my guest for the very first segment, this exclusive, is Dennis Miracles Abuaji, Director of Communications for the Dr. Bawumia 2024 campaign. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Council. Thanks for having me.
Right. So, it was around this time last week.
Yeah.
People had queued and voting had begun like an hour. And there were hopes, particularly in your team. Of course, many were unsure what will happen. By close of day, we saw what had happened. How are you processing that?
Well, Samson, let me first of all congratulate the President-elect, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and the NDC party. I think that to run a campaign that long it's no mean an activity. It's a lot of work. And so if you eventually come out victorious, it's a big deal. It's unfair if anybody tries to downplay that victory. You know, so I think they've done a very good job. by unseating our government and coming into power. And I really congratulate them for that. This is not the results that we expected from the MPP side. We were quite optimistic that, considering the prevailing situation that the country finds itself across sectors, and looking at the propositions that we had made, we believed we had superior...
The bold solutions.
Yes, we believe we had superior propositions to confronting these issues than the NDC did. And so we're quite confident that the people would accept it and then give us an opportunity to roll out those, propositions in dealing with these issues. But I think the people think otherwise. They think that maybe the options that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama brings to the table could deal with their issues than the options that we brought. And so they've taken a decision, and it's an emphatic one for that reason. You recall in 2016 when we won by 1 million, we thought it was historic. In fact, people thought it's not something anybody could repeat.
That's right. The president will, say it anytime he had the opportunity.
Civil society, political watchers. It was difficult for you to imagine a repeat of that. And so to realize around 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. that we're actually losing by not just 1 million, but 1.6 million. It was a big shock. It was a big shock.
Right. So you say John Mahama won deservingly because he has spent quite some time in the campaign. So no one should try and downplay his victory, correct?
I mean, if you win an election as intense as this one, and anybody tries to downplay it, it's unfair. I wouldn't be happy if it was the MPP that won these elections and anybody tries to downplay it. No, I mean, we're in the same industry. We know what it takes to win an election. You may disagree with the strategies and style, but, an election has no replay. Once a person wins, is won. And I think that we need to give them that credit, and we need to give the former president that credit. It's a big deal.
Right.
You lose an election by 1 million, and then you come back 8 years later and win by 1.6 million. That's a big deal. I mean, personally, for him as a person, as a politician, it's a huge achievement.
Right.
And if he's to write a book post his presidency this final term, I think it will be with some great pride, for him to put that together. And that's recognition and that acknowledgement. I think nobody should.
So when members of your party and Dr. Bawumia say that it's your people who didn't come out to vote, so you gave away the election, that's not fair to John Mahama.
No, they are not the same. They are not the same. They are not the same. There could be what John Mahama did right that ensured our people didn't come out to vote. You understand? So let's not confuse the two. Indeed, the reason, one of the key reasons why this resource is as it is, per the data, is because our people didn't turn out to vote. And that's fact. But they are not the same. Why the people didn't turn out to vote has its own reasons as well. But that doesn't take away, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is not in any way saying that to take away the credit or to acknowledge the feat that His Excellency...
And when you say you gave it away, it means that the person didn't exactly win it on his strength.
No, it could also mean that you didn't do enough to be able to hold on to it. You understand? Because, once you give your opponent the credit, you're also going to look at why it happened the way it happened. You understand? And so your opponents may have done something absolutely right. I mean, your opponents may have infuriated your followers. He may have triggered the emotions and sentiment of your followers, in a superior way. He may have found ways to suppress your followers to turn out.
What do you say to those who say that kind of analysis is completely wrong, that it is your people who didn't come out, so you gave these elections away?
The data is there. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the data. If if you put the
2020
emotions aside and you pick the data and you analyze it, nobody, I mean, let's look at, and each of the regions, all the regions. You look at Ahafo region, in 2020, MPP had 145,000. 2024, 113,000. NDC had 116,000. 2024 had 130,000. In Greater Accra, MPP had 1,253,179. Samson note, 1,253,179. NDC had 1,326,489. In 2024, MPP had 681,000. Half of what we did in
previously.
2020. And then NDC almost remained at the same 1.2, 1.3 million. So you see, if the 600,000 from NPP had gone to NDC, and for example, NDC is reading 1.8, 1.9 million, then you can easily say that these 600,000 have moved from the MPP and gone to vote for John Dramani Mahama. I don't know if you are getting the credit.
What happens when you factor in the turnout?
Yeah, I mean, that is what it is.
Because the turnout last in 2020 is not the same turnout today.
The turnout is actually what is pointing to these analysis. So you look at the turnout and you realize that your strongholds, areas and places where, according to data, would vote for you, every 10 persons that vote, maybe 7 or 8 will vote for you, are not coming. Then it's pointing to the same direction.
Shouldn't the turnout also suggest that it's not really about your people not voting, but it is really the case that as many as turned out, the majority wanted John Mahama?
So you can make that assumption. But the other assumption that is also being made is true. And so if you compare the two, the one that has a lot more of factual basis is the one that you look at your strongholds to do the analysis. So each of the assumptions could be possible. However, if I'm getting low turnout in Latte, where you know that when 10 people turn out, 8 will vote, and you are getting high turnout in whole Central, where you know that when 10 people vote, 9 will vote for the NDC, then the initial assumption we are making is a stronger one. So we are not discounting the other assumption as well. But which one is?
The NDC suggests strongly that they were successful at breaking a certain rigging machine that has always been in play, particularly in Ashanti. And this is why the NPP didn't make as much.
So again, you know, when you win a contest, you cannot be faulted for saying all these things. And to be very honest, I don't want to take the excitement out of the NDC. I'm a fair player.
Okay.
It's okay. They should suppress, you know, all of that. Perfect. So they couldn't suppress in 2016. That's why we won. I mean, right. They couldn't suppress in 2020. We pray they are able to suppress in 2028, 2032. We are all improving. So congratulations to them. But these things are being said by them because they have won. And at this point, you have lost. Any attempt you try to discount these things that they are saying is basically making you look very sour. However, that is flawed. It's flawed because these are human beings who have registered legitimately. And the evidence is that they came out to vote in the last four years elections, but they didn't show up to vote in these elections. So you could not have suppressed any rigging machine. That cannot be correct. Maybe you can make a point that you suppress the turnout of your opponent followers in the strongholds. That is a political strategy that can be deployed. That you manage to suppress the turnout, that you can infuriate people. Politically, you can unleash propaganda in your opponent's, strongholds to get them not to come out. I remember in 2008, I was a young, student who was doing national service. We went to Volta region. Remember the Damotri scenario in the Volta, when a chief announced that he had declared all MPP persons in one of the communities personal non-granted. And everybody ran. In a situation like that, yes, you have actually suppressed turnout by the MPP, but surely not a rigging machinery. Samson,
so for you,
I am looking for anybody that can prove that in this country, apart from the fact that you use brute force to maybe take pink sheets from people like it's happening now, Bennett, you can rig an election. It's not possible. Our election is not electronic. Our election is very, very, very manual. Even apart from the fact that we are doing using biometric, if you look at it critically, it's extremely manual.
In the course of time, we'll interrogate. I mean,
It's
sometime in the year, or maybe next year, we'll be interrogating what the NDC says it discovered ballot boxes stashed in a certain place in a certain room in Kumasi.
It's false. So first of all, you know, we should not allow people to continuously play on our minds. I think I addressed that issue in one of the press briefings.
Yes, you did.
I did. Sam said, EC has a ballot paper. And then political parties have sample ballot papers. Political parties, MPP, NDC printed millions of sample ballot papers. First of all, that ballot paper...
You print them in the millions.
Oh, yes, because you have to use to sort of educate people. First of all, that ballot paper Yamin was standing by, when you look at it, it's not the EC ballot paper. It's a dummy ballot paper. That is the first thing. So it doesn't make sense for anybody to go and stand in a room somewhere, make a call and say, I found ballot papers. When indeed, that ballot paper is not even an EC ballot paper. No serial numbers, no similar designs. You know, sometimes we spend so much of our quality time.
But was that your story?
No. It's actually theirs. And that's even established. You know, so what Yamin did was that, and it's all part of the, you know, strategies. What Yamin did was that, along the line, he realized that these people were turning against him. You know, when he did his press conference and his own people attacked him and all that. So he needed to win some goodwill. So he goes into a certain room where he has his own sample ballot papers, picks a phone, making a call to whoever. They have a phone on him and says, I found ballot paper. You actually think and believe that Yamin got to know that there are legitimate electoral commission ballot papers in a house somewhere. And then he, on his own, with his own people, went into the room. He didn't put a camera on himself from outside the gate. When he was coming, he didn't do it. He waited to enter a certain room in a corner where you can't even see the window. You can't even determine the house number, and then places a call. Eventually, when it was checked by the Ashanti Region Police, they realized that it was his own, you know, ballot papers. The owner of the house is known. The owner of the house doesn't even live in this country, and we know who those ballot papers. And indeed, those ballot papers are not even original EC ballot papers. Okay. But those are all, right, you know, parts of the scheme.
So yes, like I said, we'll be interrogating that further, but not on this platform today. I was talking about the turnout. So in 2020, we had 79% turnout, and this time we had 60.90 turnout. The NPP's explanation for that is why that turnout which went against you.
Well, I mean, it's very early days. What I gather from the leadership of the party is that surely there's going to be some, you know, inquiries into what really transpired with this apathy and what caused it. But one of the easiest things to put your fingers on without doubt is the fact that our people were not happy with us, the government.
Why so?
Oh, I mean, you remember there are a series of issues, some of which I think that maybe we underrated the extent to which our people were unhappy. You remember when even our own MPs were making calls for certain changes in government and, you know, certain reshuffles and
the Pierre Kubi, Eugene Boachienchi, all of them are saying this, and some of your party members are also saying this was when you should have listened. You didn't. The president didn't listen. Absolutely. So they blame it on the president.
Absolutely. I mean, so there are facets of issues that, as a government, our people may not have been so happy about. Again, there is this issue of cost of living, which our campaign really made proposition to address. You can't take it away from the people. I always insisted that the entire economic conversation, what was most important to the people was the cost of living. And it is very difficult for you to explain or have a conversation on someone about cost of living. So if you're unable to deal with it before the person gets to the ballot, be rest assured that the person will punish you for it. So if this person doesn't want to punish you, there are some people in our strongholds who just don't see themselves ever putting their thumbs on a ballot for the NDC. So I will not go at all. I will not go. And they expressed it. In fact, on the day of elections, one of the things that was quite predominant, and some of your reporters will say, is people standing at polling stations and say, I'm not going to vote. It happened.
Showing up at the polling station and saying, I'm not going to vote. Yes. So why do you show up in the first place?
To spite you. We just want you to know that we are punishing you.
The president has been blamed, particularly in Kumasi, for telling a particular constituent that the chiefs were making demands, and he says, well, whatever it is, when you go to the polling booth, you vote for who you want to vote for. You are not forced to vote for who you want to vote for. And the people got angry and punished you for it.
Well, I mean, again, like I keep saying, definitely there was some anger in our people, without doubt. And that's clearly reflected in the ballot. I mean, one of the things that is quite clear in all these conversations, you realize that everybody seems to sympathize with Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. It's like a candidate who's suffering from, who's a victim of circumstance. It's like sins being, brought upon him, which he has nothing to do with it. At a time when he's going on a mission of his own, and so he has a responsibility at this point to reach out to these people and say, "I understand you've punished me for these things, but shall we have a conversation? Shall we talk and see if we can heal these wounds and find a common path going into the future?" His capability, his ability is not in doubt. His level of innovation is not in doubt. The fact that he's a leader that this country needs is not in doubt. But sometimes you can find yourself at the right place at the wrong time. and whether you like it or not, you have to face it. And clearly, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has to face it. He's basically been punished for a lot of sins that he didn't commit.
We'll talk about whether he didn't have a role to play in this, and that in fact, this vote was a vote of no confidence in Akufo-Addo, a vote to spite him, a protest vote against him. But when I raised that issue, I wanted to bring up the question of what many are talking about, the arrogance of power. That a president who was begging for power suddenly could tell electorate that I don't care who you vote for, stop worrying me. How much of a role have you recognized that the arrogance of power played? Eslosu lost in Ablekuma West. People who don't vote in Ablekuma West have been jubilating.
Arrogance is a perception. It's very, very difficult for me to really make a determination on someone's arrogance or otherwise. I want to be very careful. Look at me, an Ekuapem boy, a Presby-trained student, a Methodist. Some people may describe me as arrogant, but anybody that knows me knows that I'm not close to it. You understand? There's fine lines between confidence and arrogance. And in our country, it's very, very difficult. I'm very, very, very strongly opinionated. Like if I have something to say, I'll say it without holding back. You understand? It doesn't matter where, who. If I have to say, I'll say it. If I'm convinced about something, I'll stand by it. And if you don't take care, you'll be described as such. So I'm very, very careful when it comes to that. But those are individual decisions and individual appraisals. I don't think you can have 1 million voters going to vote based on that, indicator. People have various reasons why. What we can do is to identify the common ones, the ones that run through, and then we can use those ones to make a determination.
I think this runs through because when I interact with people in Ablekuma West, which is my constituency, many admit that they believe that Eslosu has the clout to be able to bring the development she's bringing to the place and she has done, and that Reverend Addo will not be able to match that, and yet they jilted her. The president, after winning office, suddenly began to tell CSOs that, get off, what do you know that my ministers and my appointees don't know? So this played a major part, didn't it?
I haven't done an appraisal. I will not be able to.
People's sentiments that I'm reflecting to you.
We always disagree with people on how they feel and how they. I mean, I'm sure by this time people are disagreeing with me on some of the things that I'm saying. It doesn't really represent the view of everybody, and I doubt, honestly speaking, Akufo-Addo is persona and demeanor. If you're watching him from afar, the easiest take would be he's arrogant. But for anybody that has worked with him and been very close to him, including CSOs and you yourself, Samson, would disagree that he is not arrogant. He is, very strongly, he has very strong views and he says them as it is and all of that. Sometimes your body language, sometimes your posture could send certain waves and signals, but it doesn't necessarily represent. I have worked with him as a presidential staffer. I don't think he's anywhere close to arrogant. But he's a very strongly, fisted person. He would say it as it is. If he disagrees with you, he will say it. If he has a disagreement with Samson, he will not come and say, Samson is my friend. No, he will say it confrontationally. And so sometimes that interpretation...
If he's telling chief, if he's telling people who have suffered a catastrophe, like the spillage of the Akosombo Dam, and he's telling them, you don't vote for me anyway, so what's it? Why should I be bothered about you?
In jest. Why do we
in do jest?
Yes. Sometimes, Abba, Samson, when you people cry, all the things I've been doing for you, you don't vote for me. You don't vote for me. For the first time, vote for me. Some say, how is this an issue? The person is already there anyway. He knows you don't vote for him, but he's already there to provide an intervention. And we are in a political season. So if the person tells you that after all the things I've done for you, don't vote for me, how is that an issue? Haven't we had politicians say all this? Does it make them arrogant? The former president told a similar thing to the Ashanti region. I don't think he's arrogant. You understand what I'm saying? And I actually don't think that if I come to your constituency and I've given you first-class roads, I've given you millions of dollar markets, and you're still voting against me, I shouldn't tell you. And if I tell you, it doesn't make me arrogant. You understand? But like I'm saying, if we had won these elections, all these analysis would have happened. But once we've lost, we should accept these analysis and have conversations around them. Maybe yes, maybe not. But eventually when we really sit down and complete our introspection, we identify them and we avoid some of these things moving into the future. We're only growing.
So what's your story? The bottom line of your story is that your people didn't come out to vote. You're going to work on them for the next election.
So two things. We have to work on our people to let them understand the circumstances under which each of their issues and sentiments transpired the way it transpired. Secondly, we have to learn from this experience and realize that you may be right, or maybe you have to find a different way to handle it. So those are the things going into the future.
What are some of the learnings you're talking about?
I mean, there is this issue about the National Cathedral. You understand? You may be strongly convinced about it. But if the people have punished you again, in the future, you learn from it and realize that if you are doing the thing for the people and they say they don't want it, maybe you call, do a nationwide address and say, I've been trying to do this thing and the feedback I'm getting is that you don't want it. As a result of that, I've stopped. It's a big lesson we've learned.
So you know my record on the National Cathedral. My biggest problem at the beginning was the lies that were being told around it, that it was not going to involve government money, we will not put anything in it. Then we found out that the state was putting something in it. And everybody you speak to was in complete denial until later we heard that, there's going to be seed money for it. We even went to the Supreme Court, and the Attorney General in his address tells the Supreme Court that the state was not going to be involved. And that convinced the judges, and they made a note of it, that in any case, it's not being funded by the state. So the questions of the location and all, what sort of learning do you think you can take from it?
I think communication is very important.
To advise you going forward.
Communication around such things are very important. I am very, very sure that maybe what government at that time, or the Attorney General, the Finance Minister, who I had on several occasions driving and leading this project, maybe what they should have communicated from the get-go is that even though I'll be raising funds from, private individuals and corporate organizations, we want to start. We need to do demolition. We need to prepare sites, and for which reason government will provide some seed money. But that is not what is going to actually execute the project. If we had, had the communication right, we wouldn't have been where we are at the moment. So maybe communication is also very important. Again, you learn from that also, because even from the stage of demolition, marking the site, demolition and all, I don't think the communication was handled right. And when you do that, you allow your detractors to take advantage and lead the conversation. So for me, the biggest takeout from the National Cathedral is the fact that we allowed people who obviously are political beneficiaries from whatever fallout of the cathedral to drive the conversation. So they will have to come out and come and say, hey, judges are being moved out. They will come and explain. They would have to come and say, hey, the design is like this. They will have to come and explain. You know, they will have to come and say, hey, there's been a digging down and discussing this, why they will have to come and explain. If we had gone the other way around, I am sure we wouldn't have been where we are today.
Interesting. And when I first made the disclosure about how the judges were being moved out of the place, because I don't know how some people were thinking, because I work with judges and judges will speak to me. And I even got intercepted letters that showed that they were so, embarrassingly, in a way, unprepared, being moved out. And I spoke about how some of the buildings there were even still uncompleted. Most of them were new. And the narrative, even including from Peter Mewu then, was that, these buildings are dilapidated. The information ministry, they are dilapidated and we have to change them. That was all a big lie, because the dilapidated ones were just a few of them. Well, let's focus on you. Now, let's get into, let's listen to you on the day of the elections.
So, on the day
we won't be having such periodic and rapid engagement with you. And the interest of transparency and also reducing the very high level of misinformation and disinformation that our obvious losing opposition party is churning out. We are more than halfway through the process, and so far the turnout is very, very, very encouraging. And we're urging everybody that is yet to cast their vote to start moving towards your polling station and cast your vote. So far, the process has been extremely peaceful. It's been very smooth and fluid, and we commend the Electoral Commission and the security services for a very good work done so far. And clearly, we can all attest to the progress we are making in our electoral processes in this country. You can also realize that by virtue of the reduction of the sizes or the number of people who vote in a particular polling station, it drastically reduced the queues that we are usually accustomed with in previous elections. And that's something that we also commend the Electoral Commission for. We also see the swiftness with which the security services, the Ghana Police Service, is handling issues as they come up on a minute or per the hour. It is important for us to note that in spite of all of these things, we have experienced some delays in other polling stations, but I'm very sure the Electoral Commission would have a strategy in place to ensure that everybody in the queue gets to vote. And so we are encouraging our fellow citizens to move towards your polling station and get in the queue and exercise your rights. This comes but every 4 years, and you do not want to miss this.
Which of your press encounters was
this? This was the first one.
This was the very first one. And this was at what time?
This is, I think, around 11 a.m., 1 p.m. I can't recall. But this was a very early one. Okay. What we did was to put out a plan to try and give, periodic briefing to the press. It was for a very good reason.
That's right.
In the course of the day, there are a lot of misinformation, disinformation, a lot of thuggery, a lot of confusion around. So the structure was for us to have that periodic update to clarify, explain, give updates as and when we receive from our constituencies to the general public. And I think it really helped. So this was very early on in the day. So we had, I think, four press briefings in a day. I did 3 of them, and then the General Secretary did 1.
Right. At this time, you were very sure.
Yes, absolutely. Why not, Samson? I mean, could you have imagined 1.6 million?
then it means everything would have gone wrong with your own systems. Because by this time, you ought to have known that it wasn't well.
Well, it was too early. It was very early. It was very, very early. This was barely about 3 hours into the votes. Yeah, it was
3 hours.
So you realize that in this statement, we're even asking people to get out and vote.
Yeah, so this one was around 11. At about 11 was your second one.
Okay, so this was
the one that you were flanked by Richard Ahiagba and
that was midnight.
Fatima.
That was midnight.
That was midnight?
Yeah. The Richard and Fatima is midnight. That's the last one.
Okay.
That was midnight. This was very early.
Right.
This was at a time when we were actually calling people out. This was the first one.
And by the time you did the second one, you were still very sure, midnight, that you were winning.
Because the vote hasn't been counted. You only know you are not winning when the vote has been counted.
Around the same time in 2020, we had screenshots, figures from the collation room or the election monitoring center
of the NPP.
Of the NPP. So you ought to have known by then.
But wait, let me ask something. When you are losing, you don't put out your figures. It is when you are winning that you put it out. So let me remind you, between 6:30 p.m. and 9 p.m., we're putting out our screenshots. I actually have some. It was on Facebook. It was put out. It was put out all the way up to about 12 a.m. We're still putting out the screenshots. But if you are losing, what are you going to put it out for? Samson. Next time when you are losing an election, put yours out. As at 12 a.m., we're still putting out screenshots. And you could see that we're still leading.
Nana Kumia says you knew as early as February in the year.
Maybe he does, but that's not accurate.
February or March, thereabouts.
That's not accurate. I'm sure maybe he
says
to...
you knew
No,
as a campaign.
That's not accurate.
That you will lose.
That's not accurate. I mean, February we had just had our candidate for 2 months, so that cannot even be correct. That's not accurate. Unless maybe Nana Kumia is referring to the polls that were at that time. You know, as of 2022, it was a drastic loss. In fact, before Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was even elected, people were even wondering the kind of messaging we're going to put out and tell the people. So maybe that's what Nana Kumia is referring to. But February was 2 months after Dr. Bawumia's election. You couldn't have even done any proper polling on him anyway. So that cannot be correct.
So you've had a good number of your people. You've had, I've referred to Boachi Entry and the Apia Kubi, and most of them in the commentary, they isolate the president, they isolate Ken Ofori-Atta, and some even push it to Gabi Asare-Chiridakon and the rest. Let's listen to this one too.
Doing a self-check and a reality check and improve upon themselves. They want to inflict upon the entire country the damage that they themselves have brought upon themselves, and they want us to all live in it together. That is what we are not going to allow. And we want to thank every single Ghanaian, every single citizen of this country, both those within and without, those living abroad, for working together with all the institutions and bringing us this far. We encourage everybody to remain calm but extremely vigilant. Trust us. Believe us. This election is going to go to a very sensible conclusion. Nothing else. Trust the MPP on that. It is going to go through a very, very, very successful conclusion, and a very sensible one as that. As usual, the NDC is doing what they know how to do best, behaving in the most irresponsible and disgraceful manner that you can expect from a political party. They are calling on their supporters at this hour. Elections are over. Your supporters were supposed to mobilize the people and get them to their votes, their polling stations, and cast their votes. That is what political parties do. Simple process. Campaign, encourage your supporters to canvass for you, get the voters to go to the polling station, cast their vote for you. Everybody in the full glare of the public, the counting is done at the polling station.
It must be a very difficult job. This is not the sound I was calling for, but it must be a very difficult job for you. That at this time, you knew your numbers were bad and it was not going in your favor. And yet you had to communicate to your people hope and confidence.
It wasn't difficult because at this time, our numbers were right. So it wasn't difficult. At this time, as at the time I was speaking, our numbers were clearly us in the lead. But you see, this pressure was not even targeted at...
By this time, the NDC had collated 36,000, almost 37,000. And some of us were aware. And we knew that it was really bad for you. And after you spoke, and you actually said, we will wait for the EC to declare before we won't do anything, we concluded that you knew it, that you had lost.
You know, when it comes to coalition, it depends on even which police stations either of you are putting in your system at what time. The percentages, you know, because you can collate all of your strongholds and be ahead and fail to realize that the rest that are coming is from your... So the fact is that at this point, we're still in the lead, and we felt that it's important that we keep everybody vigilant. But that was not even the focus. The focus of this presser was the near chaos that the NDC were calling for. And that's something that I'm worried that the media haven't highlighted. That, because you remember that this presser was after the NDC held the presser and called on their followers.
And you were watching us, and you heard us condemn the conduct.
Their followers to move.
You were watching us at the time. You heard us condemn the conduct, right?
I think you should reiterate it.
You heard us. We condemned it over and again.
So that was the actual focus. Because Samson, I still insist, and that's my personal conviction, that we have one of the best electoral systems you can find in the world. Not just Africa, in the world. It's not a perfect system. Neither is any electoral system you can find across the world. Not the first world democracies. And the last thing we want is to jeopardize what we have achieved.
But you condemned them and ended up also asking your supporters to mass up at the stations.
I'll come to that, but don't truncate me. So the last thing anybody would want is to disrupt that, especially on the back of chaos. And I still think that it was completely responsible, was reckless. It was unnecessary for the NDC to ask their members to go to the coalition centers. In fact, that call is what has transpired into what we are seeing. So what happened is that at some point, now the NDC members at the coalition centers started disrupting and burning the pink sheets and the ballot papers at the coalition centers. The Chiman South, Suhum, and Sawum. I mean, you can't count them, about 17 of the coalition centers. And so that was the actual focus of that presser. That presser was to deal with that situation. Because, I mean, I was alarmed. Let's
move on. We have very little time now.
I was alarmed that how far we have come.
Right.
How far we have come with this process, and we are almost through with it. We're going to allow thuggery and violence to mar it. And for me, how does
the NPP feel now that the NDC has 2/3 majority in Parliament? They, regardless of whatever happens with the rest of the results, they still have 2/3 majority in Parliament, and they can do anything they want to do. How does that feel?
You know, for me as a political...
Scares you, right?
No, for me as a political scientist, if you ask me, I'm happy. Because in any case, what has the lack of 2/3 majority really done in our Parliament anyway? Look at it. You look at it.
It is about what that number can do.
What is it that even 137...
Including what it can undo what you have done.
What is it that 137 even did for us? What did it do for us? It's not as if when you even have a split, it even does anything extraordinary for you. The executive of the day end up anyway having their way anyway. That is my point. And I'm saying this purely from the political scientist point of view. Now, my excitement is that now, at least whatever goes on in Parliament, the entire responsibility is on the party, NDC. You can't come and put the blame on
Bawumia must be worried. He's the leader of your party now.
You hang on.
He's the leader of your party now.
That's what I'm saying.
He's the leader of your party now.
But
he must determine the structure of your group in Parliament. Yes. He must be very worried.
But what is the group going to do even if it's not a 2/3 majority? I'm saying it from our experience. What are you going to do? What has the minorities of this country been able to do?
It is about what this majority can do.
Do it. The people will take a determination as to whether they are happy with you. Why? If you're going to do it and it's in the interest of the people, why shouldn't we be happy? Do it. And I'm happy about that.
Okay.
I really want them to use their Twitter to undo all the things they want to undo. After all, the people have voted for you to run government. And they want you to do what is right for them. So if you decide to use your absolute majority to undo things that are in the interest of the people, why shouldn't I be happy? I'm an opposition. I should be happy that you are pressing the necks of the people.
So what is the Bawumia campaign now going to do? We've seen he quickly went to, or people came to him, MPs came to him pledging support, and he's assuring them, trying to give them hope. What is he going to do now going forward? I
think the one thing is for sure, that the party and even the people of this country acknowledges his hard work, his dedication. Nobody, even in the midst of all this discussion, has even pointed a finger at him.
Really? They have mentioned why the president brought him into his campaign in the first place, to fix the economy. The economy is broken as never before.
But we've seen the post-election analysis. Now we are not doing the pre-assumptions. The numbers and the outcome and the sentiment exiting the polls is quite clear. Everybody believes that he's applied himself very well. The party and most of us are simply waiting for him to make a decision. And I can tell you that the party is on standby for him to take a firm decision. And once he decides that he's going to run again, be rest assured that the party is going to rally behind him strongly.
Is that a decision you are unsure of?
I am very sure of that. Very sure.
You're sure he will make that decision positive?
As to whether, no, we're actually hoping. We're actually hoping he does. We're actually hoping he does.
You know he will, or you are hoping?
I'm not in his head. You know, even as a spokesperson for the campaign, I only see what he has told me, not what he's thinking. So we are waiting, but we are all praying and hoping that he leads the party into the 2028 elections. He's done so well. He's applied himself so well. Look at the decorum with which he executed his campaign, the elevation with which he's lifted the political discourse.
And if he does, Napo will not be in the consideration, because you have heard how he was such a bad idea to your campaign.
I don't know about that. I mean, selection of running mates is always a prerogative of the flag bearer. And so maybe when you had an opportunity to sit down with him, you can ask him. You can ask him all of that. But we're really praying and hoping that he comes to lead us into the rebuilding, you know, reorganization, reflection, and then work towards recapturing. The party is trying to rebuild.
He's the leader of your party, yes. So that's his job.
And he needs to really stand up and lead us to do the rebuilding and the reflection, and then, you know, lead us into recapturing.
Thank you very much. Dennis Miracles Abuaje is Director of Communications for the Bawumia 2024 campaign. And this is your election headquarters. This is Newsfile. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is your election headquarters, and this is Newsfile. And on our special edition, just gone by in the first hour, we had Dennis Miracles Abuaje campaign of the Dr. Bawumia campaign 2024. And interesting stories that we heard from him, and how Bawumia, they are hoping and praying that he will very soon, not later, announce that he will run again, and so that he will get the needed support and marshal the numbers and begin to work on their supporters for 2028. Moving forward, Rhoda Osayafo is Senior Research Analyst, Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, and she's been with Codeo. You've been hearing them in the course of the elections. Suleiman Abrahima is Executive Director, the Media Foundation for West Africa, the foundation that produces the Fourth Estate. Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired, is author, conflict and security analyst, and he's right here in the studio. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us here in the studio, sir. Kofi Bento, lawyer and Senior Vice President, Imani Africa. He if there's anybody else that pushed for Bawumia like he did, I'm yet to see them. Reverend Dr. Ernest Edujemfi is chairman, the National Peace Council, and Kofi Adams is MP, Boem. So, welcome to our next segment after the first hour, exclusive with Dennis Miracles Abuaji. And we are beginning on the matters arising in respect of, the disputed results so far and those that are outstanding, the issues of the vandalism, the violence that have greeted the results announcement despite the hailed concession by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and of course the transition and the matters arising from the transition. As you are well aware already, there are conflicting communication from both sides of the transition. We will share the communications issued by both sides and try to find a middle ground and ensure that the transition is as peaceful and smooth as is required by and anticipated by the Presidential Transition Act 2012. So let's begin right here in studio. And Colonel Festus Abuaji, you have been writing profusely, and thank you for your write-ups. They have been very useful. They more often academic type, but they assist us to appreciate and be able to do our work. So where we have come to is that we have constituencies that are outstanding, and they are outstanding for various reasons. The Electoral Commission now has been forced by the NDC to suspend the coalition that had been going on in those constituencies. So let me start by reading the Electoral Commission's press release of yesterday. It says, halting of recollation of presidential and parliamentary election result. The Electoral Commission wishes to inform the general public that the recollation of presidential and parliamentary elections results, which was ongoing at the Tesano Police Depot for constituencies whose collation did not follow legal processes as enshrined in CI 127, as well as constituencies where collation on election day could not be completed, have been put on hold until further notice. The inability to collate and declare results on election day, which led to the recollation at the Tesano Police Depot, was due to disruptions of our collation processes by political party supporters on election day and the days following. It is instructive for the public to know that the Commission informed political parties of the change in location to the Tesano Police Training Depot after agreement with the Inspector General of Police and his team. Indeed, all the agents of the political parties observed the process yesterday, which resulted, that's Wednesday, which resulted in the collation and declaration of results for the Fantiakwa North, Akwetia, and Suhum constituencies. We urge all stakeholders to collaborate with the Commission as we carry out our mandates. How do we navigate this situation? And this was issued right after Johnson Esidu Nketia, the chairman of the NDC, held a press conference and said that they were not going to be party to any collation that was going on at Tesano, because all this ought to have happened at the constituencies by law. And declarations have already been made. So if the EC says they have to do it again, they do not agree.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I was embargoed from Newsfile, but thankfully I'm back.
Right.
Just a joke.
Right.
Samson, I'm not a legal brain at all, but I've listened to discussions in the media spaces, and I think you just mentioned it, not supported by legal frameworks. All the discussions that I've heard emphasize that there's no provision in CI 127 that allows the EC to move the collation of constituency results outside of the constituency. And in this case, we are not even talking of one. We're talking of quite a number of them. I think about 4, which have been brought to Tesano. Secondly, there's a question of integrity. The NDC, as of last night, had disputed that the EC, or they had agreed with the EC, to move the collation, recollation, or whatever they want to call it, to Tesano. So something is not right. And I came to the studio, Samson, with this cash receipt book, which allows you to fill the original and then to have what otherwise we would call counterfoils, which in this case will be the duplicate, triplicate, and so on and so forth. How could we sit around this table? And I think Kofi has just arrived. I haven't seen you for quite a while. Sit around this table. One of us, in the presence of all of us, fills this form. And then the EC retains the original.
Right.
And then we tear the first duplicate and give to Kofi, the triplicate to you. The moment that is done, the figures change. So we're talking about criminality. And instead of the EC coming to explain, I would have wished that the EC took responsibility for this lacuna.
And the explanation you just gave is consistent with regulations 42, 43 of the regulations that govern these elections, because they talk about the role of the returning officer. At the polling station, you have the presiding officer. So the presiding officer will get the ballots together in the full glare of the public.
Yes.
They will be sorted, they will be counted, and for that particular polling station, who won and who lost will be made clear.
Precisely.
Then they are moved to the constituency collation center. What they are moving there is not the ballots to be counted.
Yes.
As you just said, there is a counterfoil. So party agents or representatives or candidate agents or representatives have already appended their signature to this result. Why should there be a problem with the ballot boxes afterwards? That's the question you are asking.
This is a very tricky question. And we need to use some conspiracy approaches, conspiracy theory approaches. In the course of the campaigning, we heard one political party, precisely the MPP, emphasizing that they were going to win the elections by a strategy. And some of us were sitting at home, talking amongst ourselves and asking, what is this strategy? Now, what I can deduce is that, for instance, when lights go out at a ballot station or collation center and commotion kicks in, could that be part of the strategy? Because invariably we've seen, we've heard Michael Quay Jr., talk in the media several times that in the heat of the commotion, ballot papers or pink sheets, ballot boxes get destroyed. And several parties, I think Okaikwe, Central, Blekume, and so are saying that they don't have their pink sheets. EC hasn't got, or some EC officials, presiding officers, haven't got their pink sheets. What in the world is happening here? That somebody has calculated that I am going to, and of course we know that there have been ballot papers that have been printed. Maybe we'll come back to that. So could that be part of the strategy, to print ballot papers and then create opportunities where you could smuggle the ballot papers or pink sheets or whatever into the regular or the original, materials? All that I'm trying to suggest here is that probably our political actors and the organizations they belong to have become criminal organizations or criminal enterprises who are seeking power at all costs, no matter what. It cannot be something that anybody will say that I don't have my pink sheet. It can't be. By the way, was it not the EC in CI 127 or whichever one who said that the ballot station declarations, i.e. that pink sheet, will be pasted on a public notice board? Mm-hmm. If that had been done, I am sure several individuals would have gone there to photograph the pink sheets. So far, I have not seen any pink sheet on my phone. The EC is not accepting responsibility that her own presiding officers violated that principle. Because if the pink sheets had been pasted in public places, we would have had some way of finding what data was entered on these pink sheets. So in a way, the EC has failed, in several ways. Look at yesterday's announcement, which was about the suspension or whatever of this collation going on at Tesano. And the EC saying that it is legal. Another legal brain saying that it is illegal because it is not happening in the constituency. And the EC hasn't got any mandate to authorize the movement of those materials and the processes to...
What is the EC supposed to do? That a collation center far away in some region has been besieged by party supporters.
Yes.
So the officers and everybody else is endangered. And they are practically unable to do the work. What are the options to the EC?
A very simple understanding. We had 40,000 plus ballot stations. And we had security officers, some police and some a mixture of police and other security services. Of course, bearing in mind that some of us had argued that the military has no frontline role in policing elections, democratic elections for that matter. So after the elections, the night of the 7th, you didn't need the police officers at the ballot stations. So let's assume 40,000 police officers were deployed. You didn't need them there. You then needed them. How many constituencies do we have? 600?
276.
Yes. So you needed police to secure or reinforce the security at these collation centers. I'm not aware that that kind of redeployment was done. If it had been done, there would have been more security presence at the collation centers. Of course, we're talking of...
So there's no excuse for the claim that the supporters have massed up at collation centers and therefore not making it possible for the officers to do their work. That's what you're saying.
If this was a collation center, what I'm trying to suggest is, after whichever constituency this is, let's assume there were 30 polling stations. You did not need police at 30 police stations. You needed police at this Joy Newsfile studio.
Right.
So there should have been a lot of security presence in this area.
All those who were in the polling stations across a particular constituency.
We call it regrouping.
You may not even need half of them to go to the collation center.
Precisely. To reinforce the police presence or security presence in order to contain. By the way, I'm also arguing that as a people, we don't have institutional memory. Well, we know that this is not the first time it's happening. It happened in 2000, all the elections that we've had. So what kind of intelligence estimates went into the preparations and planning for security of this of the elections? Especially national security and intelligence should have suggested that the so-called hotspots, flashpoints, were A, B, C, D. You cannot take out Ododio. You cannot take out whichever other constituencies. So IGP himself explained that they were going to concentrate on the known hotspots. They use intelligence to have intelligence presence to know what was developing and quickly marshal additional forces. If we had done that, because it's a fluid situation, You said the end of the elections at 5 p.m.
The commendations that the observer groups and all others are giving to the election task force, the IGP, premature, you say?
They are diplomatic statements. You wouldn't expect any observer group coming from ECOWAS or AU or wherever to come and say otherwise. Generally, there was peace. I've heard this morning that Western region, there's no constituency results that are in contention. I think Northwest or one of them. So there are about 3 regions where there is no contention whatsoever. It is this Greater Accra, Eastern region, Ashanti region, and so on. And I'm suggesting that, given the numbers of security forces that we have, not the military, police, immigration, prisons, customs, whatever, we should have had enough to redeploy. First of all, you regroup. Regrouping means that you pick whatever here and there that you don't need and then put them together and redeploy or reassign, if you want to use a civilian language. There's this reassignment that I think didn't work. So the benefit of the security at the Police Academy, Tesano, does not make it legal. If the CI says that the collation has to be done in the constituency, Tesano cannot become the new legal constituency for the collation of. In a way, let me quickly finish. Okay. In a way, when you violate any of the legal provisions that regulate our elections, you are creating triggers for violence. And that's precisely what we're saying. Or you are creating factors that prolong the violence.
Kofi, are we not being unnecessary, needlessly legalistic? Because what does the change in venue for the collation, what difference does it make? I'm asking Kofi Bento.
It is my view that it makes no difference. I've said here before, you know the legal maxim, what is necessary is lawful. And you had a situation where things dissolved to a point, they, deteriorated to a point where it was necessary to go to a place which had more security. So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't change the votes. It doesn't change what is on the pink sheet. There is a certain exercise that is being conducted, and it needed to be done in an atmosphere of greater security. And that is why that became necessary. But the fundamental things remain. Let me do some management consulting. See, operational strategy for elections belong to the EC. They have to do that. And my senior here says that the observers are making political statements about the level of security. I disagree with him. Look, when the story is written, you will see that the security arrangements around this election were very good. We could exclude the military. When the
all is well that ends well.
Not even ends well. We are seeing some of the problems that arose. But when the story is written, you will find out that IGP Dampare did a fantastic job.
But he just made a point.
I'm coming.
At the constituency level, you had all the police officers in all the polling stations within that constituency who could go to that particular constituency to ensure that this massing up that disables the officers from doing their work does not happen.
I am making the point. The point I'm making is
they have been overwhelmed.
Strategy belongs to the EC. The police are there, but there is a certain limit to which they can operate. So if, for instance, the EC doesn't allow them to do certain things, for instance, if the EC determines that we are moving the thing from this station to that station, the police can't stop them. My point is, the EC could have and should have done their job within the arrangements. Now, management strategy, when you have the necessary know-how, you have the capabilities and the qualification to do something, and then you have the resources you need to do that thing well. If you do it, it is regular. Nobody should praise you. But if you don't do it, it is incompetence on your part. When we apply this analysis to the EC never complained of resources. They've spent over $100 million to do this. They had security arrangements, like we are saying, police were abundant. And I don't know of anything that they requested.
They spent over 100 million Ghana cedis, not dollars.
I'm talking about the whole election cycle.
Yes, the whole election cycle.
Let's not digress into
their budget was in excess of 100 million.
That's what I mean.
Ghana cedis.
Okay. Now, with all of that, okay, when the presidential election was determined by the political parties, who should have fewer resources than you, long before you did it. And then you have pockets, smaller units, parliamentary, constituency, collation issues. And then you fail to do that, and then you complicate the issues by your decision making. It is the EC that decided this thing should be moved to a certain point, which is now raising legal issues, which I don't think are legal issues. So here's the point. We need to call a spade a spade. And you know what Imani has said about the EC for almost 10 years now. There is a problem there regarding their operations, operational strategy, and how they do their things. And it is playing out in front of us. So here's my conclusion.
How do you blame the EC and leave out the police? Because if
the police
it is a presiding officer at a polling station that will ask the police to do ABC for them. It is a returning officer at a constituency that will ask the police to do ABC for them. But the police is capable of telling them that this is the better way to do it. So when you say operational strategy is with the EC, and therefore what the EC requests is what the police will do, I'm not sure it is the EC that says, bring the collation to Accra to Tesano.
You are not sure, so say that you are not sure. But you just said something, that it is the election or electoral commission officers who make the determination. You just said the police can advise them about security. In your own words right now, you are making the point that the EC makes the decisions, the police gives advice. Now, it is the EC who determines whether we'll take the advice or not. And I'm telling you, check. All the major decisions were made by the EC and EC officials. When it comes to security, cordoning off that space, making sure unauthorized people don't enter that space was squarely within the capability of the police.
Yes, and the police ought to have told the EC.
If they told them and the EC didn't take the advice, what do they do?
No, the EC cannot disregard the police security advice.
Override the EC on election.
What you want us to do in Tesano, we can provide for it here. Because by doing what you want us to do differently, you are exposing us as weak and incompetent.
I hear you. See, I'm saying, for instance, the police will say, do you want more security? Says yes. We have this facility. Do you want to use it? Yes. If EC decides we will not use it, if EC decides we will not move from here, or if EC decides that we want to move to another location, the police can't override them. So look, Chief just said something. We fail to take our lessons seriously, and we keep repeating mistakes. I am saying let us put this issue where it belongs, and let us give greater scrutiny to the EC's operations. Look, I don't see why we cannot all sit and agree that this is a better way to do things. Even if the EC has the authority to decide what it will do, a lot of people can come, in the multitude of advice, there's security, and say this is a better way to do this than that. We are heading into a crisis which is entirely needless. And I'm saying, given that all the resources were available to avoid this crisis, not being able to do it reflects poorly on the EC. And this is not the only example.
The EC knows. The EC knows. And the police should know, particularly for the election task force, should know that in Section 50, Regulation 50 of the CI 127, forgive me, that regulates this process, it says constituency collation center is a location established by the commission in a constituency where all the results from the polling stations are brought for the purpose of adding up and declaring election results in that constituency. And before this, I had referred to regulations 33, 32, which simply say that the returning officer must assemble the results from the polling stations without counting the ballots, recounting the ballots, fill the parliamentary election results summary sheet, give public notice to the total number of vote cast for each candidate, publicly declare who is elected, request the candidates or their representatives or counting agents of the candidates, together with the returning officer, to sign these sheets. Give each candidate or representative or counting agent of a candidate a completed and signed copy, endorse on the rate, blah, 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 forward to the commission, and so on. So it ought to be done in the constituency. That's the NDC's problem.
I totally agree with you. The law says do this in the constituency. I am making the point that the decision to take it out of the constituency was not the police. It was the EC that made that decision. Now, if I were a lawyer arguing this matter, my argument would be that what is necessary is lawful. If for some reason it was impossible to do it in the constituency, and everything showed so, the security people and everything, and the EC decided that let's take it, for instance, to the EC office to go and do the counting, etc. My advice to them would be, when you finish doing that, take it back to the constituency and finish it there. Then you will be somehow in conformity with the law. My point is, the faults, the errors, the mistakes are properly in the laps of the EC. And for me, it is important that we get this right so we can avoid some of these things in future.
Okay.
It could not be the...
Nonetheless, you don't agree with the NDC that the collation should not be happening at the Tesano?
I agree with the NDC that collation that is happening outside the constituency is happening outside the intention of the law. But it's not over. It is not over. My view is that if it becomes necessary to do that in military barracks, do it. But take it back to the constituency and finish it there.
Some of it is recollation, meaning it's been done, but the EC itself is emphatic in saying that it was done, in breach of their law. What do you say to the EC now being accused that the same EC, when these collations were done in 2020 and issues were raised, the EC said, once the collation had been done, it cannot be redone. Anyone who has any problems, head to the court 21 days after the results have been gazetted.
That is, again, where I fault the EC. And I say their conduct of their mandates leaves a lot to be desired. When you have this kind of attitude, you create problems. Indeed, if there was a problem and the EC took the view that we would take another look at it, we would go through the process again in a more transparent way, have more of your people here, have more of your lawyers here, let's do it. And this is where, even if it's done in the EC headquarters or whatever it is, the parties will agree. But when you just throw your hands up and say, go to court, okay, you create this situation where people don't trust you, and then people have a certain tendency to fight you, and in future, it plays out like it's playing out now. I think our EC should be absolutely reformed in terms of their character.
That go to court was actually what the law requires properly.
You see, you go to court when every other means of arbitration and resolution fails.
The EC at the time interpreted its laws, and it is being suggested that that was the correct interpretation, that once there's been collation, there cannot be recollation. And anyone who is aggrieved, your only resort is to the court, High Court. And the law spells out the process to be done in the High Court. So for the same EC now to be agreeing to recollation, and these recollations play out in favor of the NPP, it is being accused that it is in bed with the NPP to change results for the NPP.
You see, their history gives ground for these things. My view is that if there is collation and there are issues with the collation, and the EC properly deals with the parties and says, let us take another look at it, all right? Whether you call it recollation or whatever, a lot can be resolved with negotiations. Okay, my view is when the EC shuts the door, they have a right to shut the door. Samson, if you do something against me right now, I can choose to have a discussion with you, negotiate with you, go in arbitration, try mediation, try 10 different things before I go to court. But I can also choose at the first instance to go to court. Now, when you have an EC that takes the view that anytime you have a problem, go to court, then you're going to have these problems. My view is that the EC should be more welcoming and more prepared to listen to every party and create a situation where, don't call it recollation, but then there can be an ascertainment of the results which people are disagreeing or disputing in a way that brings them to a point to accept it. All right, without going to court. I think that is possible. But when you create this situation where nobody trusts you and people think that because of your previous actions and utterances, you are playing to one party, then this is going to happen. So I say again, the problem is with the EC. Look, they've done our elections for 30-something years so far. We all know what we've said after each election After each, from Aferijan, we said it was bad, and then we realized it was better than the next, and then we said the next was bad, and we said this one is better than the previous. You know, it's come to time to reform our EC properly. That job should be advertised, interviews had, and the person picked.
Now,
so much has to be done to avoid some of
Kofi Adams
going forward.
And congratulations to your win again.
Thank you.
Right. The NDC must be super happy. We'll talk about that. The fearful majority that you are commanding. It also means that a lot of things, low-hanging fruits. John Mahama says he wants to leave a legacy. What an opportunity to leave a legacy, particularly in making laws, for example, because there's no inhibition. He had the constitution review process done. There were a lot of the amendments that were to be done in Parliament. Osechi Mensah-Bonsu and his group completely, botched it. Osechi Mensah-Bonsu later did another review of the Constitution Commission's review work, which is sitting there. So those that can be passed by Parliament, I think John Mahama's first job in leaving a legacy. District Assembly elections, you can do it by parliamentary amendment. You should do it tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow, when the Parliament is inaugurated. But come to this issue. We understood that there was consensus among the parties initially that you could do this process, and you were submitting to the process. Then suddenly, as 3 results were collated or recollated, and they went against you, your chairman held a press conference and said, we don't want to be part of it anymore.
Well, Samson.
Let's hear Esidun Ketia first.
We in the NDC believe that what is happening at the police training school amounts to illegality. It is not founded on any laws of our elections. Neither is it based on any consensus that has been reached between the parties and the Electoral Commission. And so we want to inform the nation and to give notice to any officials of the Commission and the police who are involved in the perpetration of that illegality, to know that there could be consequences of their actions in future. We know the process of our elections is quite clear. After voting, votes are counted and the results entered on what we call the result declaration forms, or the pink sheet, and the presiding officer at the polling station proceeds to announce the outcomes at the polling stations, after which all party agents sign and then are given copies of the results. The reason is that everybody will be having the same figures simultaneously. That is one of the most important checks in our elections. And that is why we always say that elections are won or lost at polling stations. Now, after what has been declared at the polling station, the law requires the presiding officer to paste a copy of the results declared at the polling station at the place where the election took place. And then, after all these declarations have been done at the various polling stations, then the parties, together with the Electoral Commission, will now meet at a constituency collation center, where the originals of the results declared at the polling station, which will be in the possession of the Electoral Commission, will be produced and tallies are made out of that EC copies. But to check that EC itself will not play games, all the participating parties will have their collation agents at the collation center, and they will come there with copies of each of the polling station results, so that when the EC collation, constituency collation officer mentions a polling station by name and code and mention the figures, then all the parties that have copies of the pink sheets will now verify and check whether the figures on their copies of the pink sheet tally with what the Electoral Commission is mentioning. This provision is a check on the Electoral Commission officers so that they themselves cannot perpetrate fraud during the elections. Now, after we all agree on the figures as mentioned, because if everything is right, all the figures must tally, because the pink sheets are filled in quadruplicate, duplicate, quintuplicate, or whatever the case may be, depending on the number of candidates. So everybody will have the same copy. So the moment figures change and you find parties holding different documents with different tallies of votes, then there is a big problem. And that problem cannot be pinned on a single political party, because the same way political parties are capable of perpetrating fraud, the Electoral Commission officers also are capable of perpetrating the same fraud.
Tiedun Ketia is the the chairman of the NDC. And Kofi, so we're asking why is this? Why this suddenly happened? But before we go on, I read this message. It says, election security is a sole prerogative of the National Election Security Task Force, headed by the IGP. The EC is not, and not is in caps, responsible for security operations of the elections. Kofi Bentel is totally wrong. And this is coming from a source inside the Electoral Commission. Yes, Kofi Adams.
Yep, clearly that's the position in terms of security, and that is why, let me first extend my felicitation to you, the host, and my co-panelists here, and your viewers. The tester is right, and that is why when the Ashanti Regional RECSEC, Regional Security Committee, sought to do their different arrangement other than what the National Security Task Force under the leadership of the IGP had done, we all took offense to it, because they had no such mandate whatsoever as far as elections are concerned to begin to design their own different security arrangements other than what the National Security Task Force has done for all of us to abide by. But Samson, it is not true that the NDC agreed to relocation of collations from Eastern region or any other region to the Tesano police depot, because we knew that would not be lawful. At best, we had agreed to some level of collations being done within a region outside of the constituency, where practically it's not possible to do the collation within that very constituency and to a particular location that is one of the gazetted locations for the performance of such a responsibility. It explains why polling stations and collation centers are gazetted. So they are known locations even before the date set for elections. And the CI 127, which takes its authority from Constitutional Provision Article 51, which mandates the Electoral Commission to prepare such regulations and other rules which are laid before Parliament, and once they mature, become applicable for elections and referenda, comes in. Nowhere do we have anything like a collation outside of a constituency or outside of the region. We've practiced a situation where when it becomes difficult to have collation in a constituency, that collation get done at the regional office. And this did not happen only in this election. It also happened in the 2020 elections, though we were offended by it. In Zabzugu, for example, the collation was not done within the constituency and the declaration was not so done. We were so offended by it, but we went to court, we challenged the processes, and the court, it didn't end in our favor. But for this situation, Samson, if you go to a polling station and at the end of the polls, the ballot box gets open and the papers are sorted and counted, a counting agent or a party agent, as we sometimes will call it, have a right to request for what? A recount. And have another right to ask for a second recount, which the presiding officer may oblige or decline. But if he so declined, he must report this occurrence to the returning officer at the collation center. And the returning officer, by law, is obliged to have that second recount done.
You have literally read out the law.
Yeah. So this, but you don't also recount at the collation center if a request was not previously made at a polling station.
Before the declaration.
Before the declaration. If the request was not made by the counting agent or the party agent at a polling station, no matter the noise levels, a returning officer cannot open the ballot box and conduct a recount if there is no prior request at the polling station to the presiding officer. In the same vein, the law is so clear about declaration of results, and that duty is given to the returning officers. We have two returning officers in our elections, and because we have joined our elections since 1996, in 1992 we had presidential elections in November and had parliamentary elections in December. Subsequently, we've held the elections, these two elections together. We have two returning officers. The chairperson of the Electoral Commission is declared as the returning officer for presidential elections. And for every constituency, a returning officer is appointed for that constituency.
That's correct.
And he or she has the sole responsibility of declaring the parliamentary results. So one is therefore surprised that results that have been collated and declared now are being recollated. That is our concern. Results collated and declared by the returning officer now gets recollated. Under whose order, we do not know now. Because the same Electoral Commission, like you pointed out, in 2020, in the case of Techiman Saf, we petitioned the Electoral Commission at the headquarters. And they actually responded to our petition in writing. And in that response, they made it very, very clear that once the results are declared, that it's a right to ask for recollation before declaration. But once the results are declared, the only platform left for you is the court. It is only in the court that you can prove whether you did the declaration under duress or you did the declaration with half polling stations or quarter polling stations or three-quarter polling stations, or you ignored some figures, or you change figures that are meant for candidate A for candidate B. The only platform left by law is the court.
So the reference you make to what the Electoral Commission said when you requested for a recollation in 2020, in that reply, paragraph 12, the Electoral Commission said, pursuant to CI 127, the same one we are using now, because that is when it was passed, all results from the 266 polling stations in the Techiman South constituency were received, collated, and results declared. The Form 1C was used to collate the results of the parliamentary election by the returning officer. The collated results were then transferred onto the Form 1D as mandated by law. The law requires that signed copies of the forms are given to the agents of the candidates at the collation center if they are present. Now, paragraph 13. Recollation can be done at all levels when requested before the declaration of the results. However, once election results have been declared, a dissatisfied party cannot request for a recollation or recount of the results. And then pointed the NDC then that the law, as it says in the representation of the people law, is that you go to court.
So the EC knows what to do when results have been declared, whether under duress or half collation or change of figures from candidate A figures given to candidate B given to candidate C, whatever
or in
situation,
the absence of candidates agents or representatives,
or what have you. All that can only happen at the court, and it is only the court that can give orders. Even where ballots get rejected because either the mark was not so clear, and it is referred to the returning officer who may also make a further decision on the rejected ballot. If you are dissatisfied, it is not for the EC at the regional or headquarters level to further examine these rejected ballots. It is only in the court that the court can order a further re-examination of those ballots that were so rejected. If you feel that a rejected ballot should have gone in favor of candidate A or candidate B. So one is surprised that the Electoral Commission will be behaving in the manner that they are behaving. I am not so worried about recollating constituencies that have not been declared. I'm not worried about that because a declaration have not been done.
That's right.
Like the Nsawam Adwejiri, no declaration have happened. So if you are seeking to do a recollation, do it at the rightful place and under rightful environment. I'm not so worried about that. But in situations, for example, like Obuasi East, where a declaration have happened, and not just an agent, the candidate himself, who is a sitting member of parliament, has endorsed the results declaration sheet. Now you have EC says that declaration, which was signed by the MPP candidate, who is a sitting member of parliament, was done under duress and so it should be recollated.
Where else? There's been reference to Tema Ibi Bright.
Tema Central also.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the kind of reasons that I heard my very good friend Tete give, that according to him,
Samuel Tete of the
EC, that the officer who did the declaration was Tema West returning officer.
And not Tema
and not Tema Central.
Central, right.
But the same EC decides to accept Damango, which declaration was done not by even a returning officer that has taken oath, but the regional electoral officer. They are comfortable with that. This one, Tema Central, according to them, was done by Tema West returning officer. That is a returning officer that have taken the oath to perform those functions. Albeit that maybe he took the oath for Tema to perform in Tema West and not Tema Central. The EC have problem with that. But the EC didn't have problem with the regional director of EC for Savannah declaring results in Damango, because they did not find space to list that one.
So these are the things the EC, by its releases, continues to say, that the law has not been followed in the declarations. That's why they need to redo them to follow the law. And you say, once the declaration has happened, it's a closed book. It is only a court that can question it.
Exactly. And especially if you take Fantia Kwanoff, it was done by the returning officer. And in the presence of candidate agents, and the so-called deputy returning officer was present. Then now you move the deputy returning officer, so described, not to another location in the region or in the constituency, but to another region to come and collect results in the absence of the political party whose candidate has been declared the winner in Fantiakwa North, in Begro, within the constituency where the election took place, by the officer who by law is mandated to make such declaration. Now you bring a deputy who is not mandated to collect results outside of the constituency and outside of the region, in the absence of the NDC and its agent. Then you declare the one who have not been declared the winner within the constituency by the returning officer as the one who has won the election. And the EC says that is lawful.
You talk about doing it in the absence of the candidates, agents, and so on. And you find Samuel Tete also complaining about some of these things happening in the absence of the candidates, agents, and reps. But in fact, the law requires that candidates, agents, and reps cannot hold us to ransom.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
It used to be the case previously. Yeah. So now what the new law has done is, if you're a candidate, agent, or rep, and you are required, your presence is required, right, and you decline, you refuse to give it, the law says it does not invalidate what has been done. In fact, the law in the Constitution requires presiding officers, or who are they, to sign pink sheets. Yep. In the 2012 elections, we had issues with that. Yes. One of the heads of the claims that the MPP raised in the court was pink sheets without presiding officer signature. Upon that, we made a law and said we will not punish the voter who voted and the presiding officer decided not to sign. We will rather punish the presiding officer for that. Kofi, what do you say to...
Before he comes, in a situation where agents or candidates are not to hold all of us to ransom, it is when that event is happening at the gazetted location.
Okay.
Not where you have moved the collation from the constituency outside of the region where the constituency is found to another region in a location that has not been gazetted and agreed upon by the parties for any such activity to take place there.
Kofi, we agree on that. The law is on your side on that. See, the lessons from the election petition, which is what you are now citing, okay, is why we've made progress in that area, and it makes sense. The point, however, is that a lot of times the problem is with the EC's operations and the decisions made by its officers. Okay, I have a rejoinder. It's in the form of a question because of the issues. Election operations, as far as my information is that election operations are different from security operations, even in an election. And the police and co are in charge of the security operations, but the EC is in charge of election operations. The collation center gazette and where counting and co will be done is not part of what the police determine. It is part of what the EC determines, and then the security people support them. So the gentleman who responded, let's make this point clear.
Okay.
Now, when you tie that to this, and we tie that to the Damongo situation and co that Kofi is talking about right now, Samson, do we all see that there is something amiss about the EC's operations and the decisions its officers make regarding EC operations at polling stations, police stations, etc.? I don't know why.
What's wrong with EC's operations? At the polling station, the results, the ballots are counted, sorted, counted, in the full glare of everybody.
Yeah.
And then the forms are signed. The numbers are entered.
That's the proper process.
That's the pink sheet you are taking to the collation center, correct?
Kofi is saying something.
What has the EC done wrong?
Kofi is saying something. He says,
right.
In Damongo, some other officer comes and makes a declaration.
The regional director of elections.
That's an EC problem. Then in Abi Bright's case, another person makes a declaration.
West to central.
Okay.
From one constituency.
Direct EC operations. Now, EC makes a decision in one that is at variance with the decision it makes in another. You just talk about the decision they made about go to court in another situation.
When we talk about the police in charge of security, we are talking about where they have been overwhelmed. And we all saw it.
Where the police has been overwhelmed?
Yes, they have been completely overwhelmed. In Ablekuma West, for example, it became chaotic. And you saw a handful of police officers. I appreciate the fact that because the good thing that was done was that they should not use arms.
Yes.
Because they did not use arms, some people tried to, tempt them.
I was following that. They recovered quite quickly.
Yes, but the point is that even the military, who were not, as we understood, from the police and from the military itself, that were not going to be deployed at polling stations. During the day of the election, we saw them at polling stations. Where were they in the night when these party supporters were besieging these collation centers?
I hear you. I was following it. I think you were on air also. Now, when the melee happened and the police seemed to be having overwhelmed, they recovered quite quickly and reinforcements were sent. All right? And that was...
As at yesterday, the EC's complaint, as at yesterday, the EC's complaint for the problems is party supporters taking over constituency collation centers and disabling them from working, as at yesterday.
We're talking about the Damsoban, I think, situation. And
no, generally, that's what their president said. Well, you see,
we're all following generally. My view of it was that some decisions were made by the EC which exacerbated the security situation. That is my view. And I come from the position that if those decisions were not made, the security situation would not have deteriorated. For instance, moving things to Tesano. And I'm making the point, as we are all making here. In fact, there's something we are all agreeing on, that there is something amiss about the way the EC conducts itself. Earlier you said they made a decision here and then later they changed their mind. He just said, that won't go here, they changed their mind. And I'm also making the point that they are not in line with the law when it comes to this. These decisions create security problems. All right? And I'm saying that we've come 30-something years. The EC has been very resistant to anybody trying to make suggestions to them about how you do things.
The EC has rather been listening. No. When they say we are going to give accredit to only this number of media persons and we speak, they increase it.
I work in an institution that has
when they say
fight with the EC for...
They have opened up their collation centers. All of this.
They do a lot of things.
Right.
I'm saying I work in an institution where we've had a fight with the EC over its operations and technology for almost 10 years. The records are there. In this election, they procured fax machines. Fax machines. Go and read the things we've said.
Okay.
So I'm telling you, a lot. If those decisions are not made, you will not have a deterioration of the security.
I have guests joining us virtually. So how many are the outstanding issues that...
9.
Well, the EC listed 9. We disagree completely with them because we know Obuasi East have been
already declared. If anybody has an issue, they should go to court.
Has an issue, it is the
one
that you have
let's go on
to.
2.
We think that Fantiakwa North, that they claim, the EC headquarters claim that they are accepting the Tesano declaration. We disagree with them completely.
So most likely on the day of inauguration of Parliament, we are going to see two MPs for Fantiakwa in the House.
The chairperson of EC must let the law works.
But they are finished. They have done it, and they say.
And I'm saying that no,
they have overturned the first declaration.
You cannot. How do you? On what basis? Because the law does not give you the EC mandate to overturn a declaration by a returning officer. The law doesn't give the EC that mandate. It is only the court, through an election petition, that can overturn a declaration by a returning.
The EC will do gazetting.
So the EC,
and the gazetting they will do is what they have declared in favor of the MPP
That's
candidate.
what I'm saying. So that will be wrong. And if the EC do that, they are further creating a platform.
Will you ask your candidate who was earlier declared to come to Parliament?
Of course, he has to come to Parliament because a writ has been signed from him. A writ has been signed. So the EC is only mandated to forward that writ.
That's number 2.
Lawfully done.
That's number 2. You said you don't agree to 9. So those are 2.
So that we don't agree. Tema Central have also already been declared.
So that reduces the number to
Ablekuma North that they listed
4.
have already been declared.
Okay, reduces it to 3.
All these declared ones, there are no contentions whatsoever.
Okay.
We can do the...
So as far as you're concerned, what's our standing is 3.
On the 20th, we'll go to court, and then whatever the court says, we'll look at in Sawa Madridri. Because of what they were doing at Tesano, we went to court and we've injuncted that process.
Right.
The court hearing will be on the 20th.
So as far as you are concerned, in Sawa Madridri,
I think Tepa, Afuano North, has also not been...
That's also outstanding.
And I think Afuano Southwest is 3.
So 2 outstanding, 3 outstanding as far as you are concerned.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Another message again here needs to be read before we proceed to my guest on the joining us via Zoom. Some of your panelists are behaving as if they are living in a cemetery. It is not police. Is it not police impotence to witness party tax coercing a returning officer to declare the results in favor of their party? How can it be consistent with rationality that the police and EC officials should work in the danger zone, where violence is staring at them in the face? Which court will validate duress? How can the EC be in charge of security? This is a member of parliament who has a stake in these processes. Thank you very much. Now, Rhoda Affle, thank you so very much. And Rhoda is with CDD, and they, together with the very known group, CODEO, Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, were on the field and saw everything that happened. Rhoda, how do we resolve these challenges that have come up? And what is the CODEO's verdict on the process that the EC has been forced to truncate?
Good morning, Samson, and thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
I hear you clearly, Rhoda.
Great, thanks. Yes, so a lot already has been said by panelists in studio. I think it's quite unfortunate that given all that transpired in 2020, we are still back in 2024, 4 years down the line, to some of the same issues that we had in the previous elections. You mentioned what CODEO has been doing. Indeed, picking up from 2012, one of the areas for reform that CODEO sought to engage the Electoral Commission on was on the issue of collation, because we all remember some of the challenges we had at our collations and overcrowding, incidents of violence, issues with collation and all of that. And so there was a lot of efforts from the Codeo Front to sort of engage the EC, first of all, trying to put together some kind of advice, recommendations that the EC could sort of consider, and in terms of its review of the coalition process. And indeed, there was some engagement that took place. I think for me, there are also questions about how the EC itself also sort of looked back on that process, the previous process, that is the 2020 process, and how it's brought forth certain lessons with it. I know that a few things were done for this year. I know that a few coalition centers were some coalition centers were relocated with security arrangements in mind moving into 2024. But given that we have come back to some of these issues, I think the issue is what we did. How did we engage all the other actors, all the other stakeholders, the political parties? What did we arrive at? Because the bottom line is that you want to be able to deepen trust. You want to be able to deepen transparency around the process. Otherwise, everything that you do can be undermined by one or the other actor. And so, I mean, we came out with a few proposals, one of which is, one, what are we looking at? Do you want to deepen transparency with your electorate? In which case, if you are looking at the coalition process in terms of access, in terms of transparency, what arrangement do you want to put in place? And two, if you want to limit access, then what other alternative arrangements do you want to put in place to make sure that even if people are not coming there, even if you have just a few agents there, we will still be able to trust the outcomes that are coming out of this process. Mind you, the issue of publication of polling station results is something that has been on the table for so long, and it's one issue that we believe that if the EC is able to carry along, if it's able to implement publishing polling station results so that you're able to decenter, there's a lot of focus and attention on collation centers, but if people can have alternative ways of accessing polling station results, if people can sit back and do their own calculations and add figures together, because basically that's what the collation process is about, adding up the figures from the various polling stations within the constituency. I don't think this should be too much work for all of us to be able to do. So again, I think it's something that goes to the EC in terms of how do we engage everyone on the best way forward. But that is on the side of the EC. It will be unfortunate for me to just focus on the EC and discount the role of the other actors, the political parties, in terms of where we have ended up, right? I believe strongly that mantra that we need to invade coalition centers or polling stations in terms of calling on supporters and all of that, I think it's not a great approach to addressing one problem, okay? I know that there are some concerns that parties have, that candidates have, but we don't create other problems by trying to solve one particular problem. So if we believe there are issues about trust, that we cannot trust certain people in terms of their delivery on certain responsibilities, can we look at an approach that doesn't, in the process, create other problems? Okay, so every party, and the good thing is that for almost all coalition centers, almost all polling stations, we have our two leading parties having their agents present. Almost always we have the NCP and the NDC being present at about 99%, almost 100% of all polling stations. So if these parties are present, copies of results sheets are given to them. I don't see why, if there are any concerns, they cannot resort to these copies that they have and use the legal processes and mechanisms to address these, but rather we choose to call on supporters to come to these coalition centers, because in that process, we are not able to address any serious issue at all, right? We end up putting ourselves in the situation that we have found in some of these constituencies where we have found all these issues of violence and challenges with the process.
Rhoda, the parties will tell you, you remember that it was during the night, somewhere getting to midnight, that you had Sami Gyamfi first call on the NDC supporters to head to the polling coalition centers because there were attempts at swapping results and so on and so forth. And then we condemned it roundly. Just before we could finish, Dennis Miracles Abuaje, also speaking for the Bawumia campaign, also held a press conference, condemned what Sami Gyamfi has said. And before he could finish, he also asked their supporters to go to those polling coalition centers. They will tell you that they went there to protect and to avoid their verdict being stolen. You don't agree that they are going there helps to an extent?
I mean, something from the 2013 presidential election petition, one thing that came out clearly for the political parties is that vigilance is key, right? And that they need to be vigilant. And I commend our political parties in many other African countries where I've observed elections. The kind of diligence that you see our parties do here, I am yet to see it elsewhere. And for that, I think it contributes to credibility of our process and where we are. And I commend them for that. But at the same time, also, we have to be able to sort of, we need to be measured in our response, in our vigilance. So I was making reference to the 2013 election petition. And then the sense that you have to be vigilant at the polling station and the collation center was also reinforced in 2020 when we went back to the court and then proceedings, we witnessed the proceedings that took place. So yes, the parties have to do they have to do their diligence. But the issue is, how are you doing that, right? Is it by calling on the masses, by calling on the people? Because my point is, when the masses come to the collation centers, when they go to the police stations, what exactly are they going to do, right? Are they going to stop the poll officials from doing their work? Are they going to do their own collation? So we need to be clear, when we call on people to come, what exactly are we expecting them to do other than to resort to something like violence, right? So we need to see how we can navigate that quite well so that we don't create all these problems. The EC has the role, but certainly we cannot discount the role and the influence of the political parties in terms of the outcome that we have seen with this process.
So when Sami Gyamfi, for example, asked the party supporters to go there and Dennis did the same thing, I asked them one simple question. Maybe because you have boots on the ground all over these elections. Of course, election headquarters here at Joy, we also have boots on the ground, but you have some expertise. So tell us, I asked them the question, if your party supporters go to their coalition centers, what exactly can they do to change anything? Because at the coalition center, the coalition centers are not open to the supporters. So they don't get access into the coalition center. They don't get to see anything that goes on at the coalition center. Again, at the coalition center, it is the forms that have been filled and signed by presiding officers and party agents or candidate agents that is taken there. The ballot boxes don't really matter. And each party has a copy of the results already. These are the results that are simply collated. There's no counting of ballots that is done unless there is a second request for a recount, which a presiding officer declined, and then has to report to the returning officer to do the recount of those ballots. So is there something else that they are able to do to influence the process if these supporters get to the coalition center?
Right. I mean, exactly the point that I was making. That's what you just sort of restated for me. Exactly what do we want the supporters to do at these centers other than to intimidate? Because, mind you, people have their own understanding, different understanding of the laws. The party agent's understanding of the procedures at the coalition center may not be the same as a voter who has just been called upon to move to the coalition center, and they come there and they have limited knowledge, information, right? They don't know what is happening inside the coalition center, and they can easily be incited, right? There's a lot of information going on social media. It can trigger all sorts of reactions. So we just have to be careful about some of these issues and how we want to handle it. So the call is out to political parties again. If there are concerns, if you were given a copy of the pitches or the results declaration form, I don't see why we should not be able to pick up all of these issues or whatever challenges we may have with the process, pick it up even after the declaration, whether it's going to court or picking up with the Electoral Commission. I don't see why we cannot do that unless we are saying that the EC is not giving us copies of the results, which I don't believe is the case. So whatever the problem is, we should be able to use the established channels. If they are not adequate, yes, we may have to engage on that and see how best we expand on the provisions that we have.
If your verdict is that they only ask them to go there to intimidate, nothing more. Intimidation, according to the representation of the people's law of election officials and so on, is a criminal conduct that has to be punished. How do we stop it going forward?
So, yes, I don't know what their main intention is when they say go to the police station. I want to take it on face value that their intention is that they want to be there so that no wrong can be done. Again, we have just spoken about how limited the voter is in terms of even accessing the collation center to be able to make any meaningful impact. And so ultimately, what we are able to get is some of the developments we have with harassment, with intimidation, with incidents of violence. Sometimes it's even the voters themselves who become the victims of this process, right? So basically, looking at the way forward, the EC and the parties all have to engage on how we want to design our collation process, right? And I don't think there's shortage of ideas. I think the point is about engagement. I'm sure certain things were done prior to 2024 elections with results to the collation process, but the extent to which this was done is what I'm not so certain about.
Right. So now let me get to Suleimana, and we are thankful also to be joined by Chairman of the National Peace Council, and I keep him for the last on the subject for a good reason, because they have been doing things in the background all the time to try to manage, situations, emotions, and to bring things down so that we continue to keep our peace. Kofi wanted to make a quick intervention to explain the purpose that it serves when you have your supporters massing up at the coalition center. And remember, 2020, 8 people were shot and killed. Most of them happened, most or all of them, all of these killings happened during coalition. Yes. This year, we are talking about 4 people who have died. Once again, check the times and the places around which the deaths occurred. Kofi, what did they go there to do?
First and foremost, there are 2 calls that were made in one statement. Sometimes agents and persons that you place at polling stations having been declared, your candidate having been declared winner for a particular polling station, join celebration and don't move to collation center early enough to go and submit to the process. So these national calls are meant also for such persons not to be distracted by the victories that they are seeing until the process is completed. Because if you, the agent...
The calls have been to the members, so it's not the agents. If it were the agents,
you
won't have a crowd outside.
I'll come to the members. Centers. If you, the agent, don't get there early enough with your results declaration sheet copy and any other thing is submitted, that is what will be keyed in without you defending your victory. The second one is where you have situations like the evidence that have come out now following one EC constituency EC director dropping her phone, and subsequently that phone, I don't support to maybe people going into people's phone, but they went into it and evidence was found that the person was communicating with a candidate contesting that election, suggesting to him to call the military to move in because they have finished collating the presidential results and candidate John Dramani Mahama has won. And they know that in that constituency, they will vote on a certain line. So if they don't move in to disrupt the process, then something will befall him. Then all of a sudden, military moves in. If you don't have your people also present to give backing to what is legally happening in there, they get to be intimidated. So sometimes...
Professor Sabwaji just did a demonstration, which is useful. He used his checkbook.
I agree with all that.
That's after all of them have signed. And they simply tear your copy and give you.
Excellent.
If he is representing whoever, they tear your copy and give you. The original copy is with the EC officer.
Samson, excellent.
If somebody takes something that is different and the code is also different, they will be caught. Why do you need supporters there?
Samson, excellent. You see, you're speaking that things will happen normally, and the EC itself will protect the original. But the EC itself is now a party to the whole process that will help the destruction of every evidence you are talking about.
It doesn't
today,
change the paper.
No, today as we speak now, in TEPA, they cannot produce it. EC don't have their resource. The party agents lost, who were all in the room there in the course of the melee, lost their copies, and nothing is available.
Samson, information.
That is what has happened
in
now.
Nigeria, which we say is not as good as ours, they put this online so everybody can.
Well,
the point we are making is, what is the use of your supporters?
Unfortunately,
it doesn't change.
Unfortunately, listen, the EC itself, per the law, per the law, let me just finish, per the law, every resource declared at a polling station was supposed to have been affixed at an appropriate platform at the polling station. This was not done.
If they
this
do
was
that,
done,
if they do that,
if this was
will you
done,
need your supporters there?
I'm saying that if they had done that,
Yes.
like you, individuals will go and take pictures of that.
So
that
the
if they
issue is
destroy
get the
whatever
EC
is
to
destroyed.
do the
And I'm
right
saying
thing.
that the EC itself is the one conniving with the people who are supposed to protect us.
I'm not disagreeing
To mess,
with you.
to mess
I'm saying
So Kofi, listen. Now, Akle in Eburi says, I think we need an online dashboard
period.
to which all figures from polling stations are entered immediately. The agents sign and approve.
They do it in Nigeria.
By this, there will be no need for collation.
Yes.
No room.
No, collation.
Well, there was
No
still
room
be-
for suspicious activities, transparency, and speedy results declaration. You say they do it in Nigeria.
Yes.
But guess what happens in Nigeria?
No. I'm making a point. The point I'm making is, you see, some of us.
The rigging is rare. It's real.
I'm not
in
saying everything
Nigeria.
in Nigeria is good. I'm
Right.
saying Nigeria, which sometimes we tend to say is not, as organized as we.
Right.
They do something like this. There's a fundamental point which I keep making. Kofi is agreeing with me that if the EC did its things well, then they will not need to mass people there. He's saying that massing people there is a form of coercion to force the EC to do its things right. And I'm saying doing its things right, we can, political parties, civil society, all of us, sit them in a room and say, this is how you're going to do it.
So I'm taking.
And let's do this online thing.
Kind of. Then after that, I take a quick break before I come to Suleiman Abrahima and
The
chairman
chairman of the Peace Council. Please, let's hear you.
That we have is that we are talking about the ideal situation. Our environment is not an ideal situation. Now, in the case where the EC is supposed to have the original, Kevin Taylor told us before the elections that he had information that some EC officials would take a card and place it somewhere so that subsequently you don't get the data.
We don't like that source repeated on this platform.
Well, it happened. It happened in this election.
It's a source.
No,
It's a source that does not deal with verified facts.
Let me
So we
withdraw
are-
from reference to
Okay.
Kevin.
Okay.
But at Ablekuma, Michael Quay, the issue was that the EC official was holding a pink sheet which was freshly written.
Yes, that accusation was made.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, they said something happened. There was when in the commotion, people were pushed and they got into like a washroom around the place, and they found that the whole booklet, the original had been torn and thrown away, and a new one done.
Because of the suspicions around the EC, this integrity issue, the trust deficit, that is why Rhoda and you have used the word vigilance. People want to be there. And I disagree completely with the calls that were made that when you finish voting, go home.
The vigilance cannot be done by the party agents,
it's done by
the
all
candidate
of us.
agents.
It's done by all of us, 32 million
At that
Ghanaians,
point,
as you-
the vigilance cannot be done by these people.
No, it is. It's like a sports stadium. The idea that your supporters are there.
The supporters don't get access
They
to
don't
the...
get access, but
Yes.
their presence is felt.
That is intimidation.
Get it? No, it's not intimidation.
Because they tell the officers, they tell the EC officers, if you don't do this, we don't know what will happen if you move out.
It is not as easy as that. It is that if I am tempted, like the example that he gave, communicating with a candidate and giving instruction. In fact, it came out, the EC said it, that at one constituency collation center or whichever, the police were, or the military or police were invited there by the EC official. Now, that is outside of the Election Security Task Force framework. It is only the police who can invite the military. In this case, it was an EC official who invited the military to come in.
And how did the military also respond?
When you know that some EC officials...
No, I mean, if the military is responding to an unlawful command, and also the Election Security Task Force command does not also denounce it.
Because of the criminal strategy that I referred to.
All right.
That people have a strategy to steal the election. I'm not saying MPP or NDC. So you need your supporters there to ensure that a corrupt EC official, the one who was steering, Miracles Abuaji showed us, so many of the number one were torn off. The ballot sheets that were given to candidates.
That one they are investigating. We have to be sure that it was deliberate.
Let's assume that it is genuine.
Okay.
Then there was another instance where one official asked one person to vote 15 times. Now, how do you resolve this? You resolve it, among others, by having presence for the EC official to know that.
Presence for chaos.
Yeah. No, not for chaos.
Because these parties,
so therefore,
these parties had lawyers, not small lawyers.
But
they had all sorts of people.
Samson, you know that we've had an experience where a disputed constituency election results stayed for 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
And the illegal candidate remained in the house.
Yeah.
So the system that we are operating is what gives, grounds for all of these.
Right, these days the process is a bit speedy. Actually, and even those that are going to court, my suspicion is that the CJA will ensure that the judges, there's a standing order to them.
Yeah,
or
because
I did an election petition matter in the primaries. The judges were told that they should hear the matters solely focus, don't do any other case, just do that case day by day and finish it.
On that, a quick point on that. I don't know why we are not using arbitration to resolve election disputes. I just checked here, we are all agreed that indeed it will be faster and it will be more effective.
Okay.
We could do that quickly.
Right. Arbitration is consensus. Sometimes they can't agree, so it will not happen.
Over here, we are.
We take a break here. We will be right back. This is your election headquarters, and this is Newsfile. We began at 8 o'clock with the campaign spokesperson for the Dr. Bawumia campaign team, Miracles Abuaji. This is your election headquarters. This is Newsfile. It is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and our guests you've been listening to, Rhoda Osayafo, Senior Research Analyst, Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, and they were worked under Codeo that had boots on the ground monitoring the process all across the country. Kofi Bento is lawyer, Senior Vice President, Imani Africa, and I said earlier, I'm looking for anyone who supported Bawumia as he did. And the few days to the elections, his social media walls were really on fire. And people got at him as if it's a crime to support a candidate. Kofi Adams is MP Boem and Ranking Security Intelligence Committee member, Public Accounts and Independent Constitutional Bodies of Parliament. That is in this Parliament. We don't know what he will be in the 9th Parliament. Suleiman Ibrahima is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Also Colonel Festus Abuaji is retired. He's author, Conflict and Security Analyst. Reverend Dr. Enes Edujemfi is Chairman, National Peace Council. Now, Suleiman Ibrahima, thank you very much for joining us. Now, my question to you will be, how do we resolve these matters? How do we resolve these matters that have come up as far as the constituencies are concerned? We had a beautiful process, smoothly done, and all of a sudden, this appears to mar the beauty of what's the success that the globe is celebrating. Of course, the issues also of the violence that have come up, the vandalism, and the matters of the transition, which we will go into shortly. But first, how do we resolve this issue of the outstanding parliamentary results?
Well, Samson, thank you very much. I think that it is for purposes of smooth processes. That's why we have laws. And laws are made and meant to be followed. So when you have a situation where people at some point decide to interpret the law in a way that suits their interest and not as the law should be, we are bound to have some of the challenges that we are having. I think other colleagues have related to what happened in 2020 and the position of the Electoral Commission. And one wonders at this point what has changed. The law has not changed, the CI remains the same CI, and the principles must be the same. That for me is number one. Number two is that I think over the years, we've sort of tolerated impunity in relation to crimes committed during elections by individuals, by political party actors, and sometimes even by EC officials or officers. Because I don't remember the last time when after elections we are told, well, somebody has been prosecuted and jailed this number of years because the person was involved in this offense in relation to the election or otherwise. We remember what happened in Techima. People lost their lives, others got named. As we speak, who has been punished for it? And if care is not taken, what we are witnessing now, and we already, as you said, 4 people have died, and if things continue the way we have always had, it means that no one is going to get punished. We all know that at the polling stations and at the constituency levels, the people who are often recruited as election officials are people who are known in the communities where they work. Some are teachers, some may be nurses, and so on. And within the communities, people know the affiliation of these people. And so while they preside or they serve as election officials on the day of elections, they are already suspicious because somebody knows that this person is an NDC supporter, this person is an NPP supporter, and the eyes are on them. So at the close of polls, people are watching what will be the tendency. Are these people likely to try and do something fishy for this party or that party? And that is why, for me, the vigilance is important. And on this occasion, we saw the level of vigilance that both parties put in. But I think that vigilance does not mean recklessness or lawlessness. But what we are seeing in this case is vigilance being extended into recklessness and lawlessness. Because I don't think it is the business of any political party activist or any political party agent to direct a presiding officer on how elections must be declared and how the processes should be done. But in this case, I saw videos where you have party people standing by a presiding officer. The presiding officer is declaring the results, mentions a figure, maybe gets it wrong, and then he's being corrected by the party people. No, it's not this. Then the presiding officer repeats, and then at the end of the day, declaration is made. I have a very close friend who contested as an MP. The earlier reports, and because he's a friend, I was keen on knowing what was happening. I called friends in the area. They say, oh, your friend has lost. 2-3 hours later, I called my friend, he's not picking. 2-3 hours later, a friend calls me to say that, oh, I've been declared the winner. I said, are you sure? He said, oh, yes. I said, oh, but earlier reports suggested that you had lost. So, no, I've just been declared. Then an hour later, I get reports that, oh, your friend has lost too, finally. And I'm like, what is happening? Then I call him back, and he says, yeah, well, they've declared again that I have, I couldn't make it, and I've lost by some votes, and I don't want any chaos, so I say, well, let matters settle. So I think that at the EC levels, the processes have to be followed. I think a lot of rules are bent, a lot of processes are overridden, and as a result, the confusion can be unbearable. Samson, I just want to also comment about this whole thing about election security and all of that. Look, we all have relatives who may be in the security forces. Prior to the elections, I think December 1 or so, we all read a statement from the Ghana Armed Forces saying that unless they are invited by the police, no military officer was going to be anywhere close to a polling station. But we saw what happened in Obuasi East, where there was a scuffle between civilians and military officers. The question is, who got these people there? Were they invited by the police or somebody else got them there? Again, it takes me back to the whole thing about prosecutions and investigations and prosecutions. I think these matters have to be taken seriously because we cannot just deal with the issues around this election, forgetting that 2028 will be another election year, and it's just 4 years down the line. I think we have to implement processes that at least, even if we are unable to kill some of the ills of this particular elections, going forward, we will say that we have remedies for some of the things that will happen. Those military guys who were at Obuasi East, for example, who got them there? I think it is something that we have to investigate. And if they were there unlawfully, they have to be prosecuted. Again, on the issue of election security, I think the point is, we all know, we are in a country where we have about, one police officer to maybe 600 civilians. That's the ratio, or even more. And so when we talk about, let's say, the police's role, I am happy that in this election, we didn't have an incident where the police maybe used live, bullets, firing, tear gas, truncheons, and so on and so forth. I think the incidents of death that have happened, I don't know if any of them can be attributed maybe to an action of the police. But it got to a point that I was quite scared about the possible action of the police and the consequences. Because at some point, the only option left to the police was to either deploy the use of force, either tear gas or whatever. And if that had happened...
They had pepper spray.
Or pepper spray.
They had that.
Yes, and I'm saying that if they had decided to resort to that, perhaps, the chaos emanating from that, the stampedes and all of that, no one can predict what could have happened. So the numbers of our police officers, and given that this is a national, this is not a by-election of about 5 or 6 constituencies or Greater Accra elections that you say, if all the police are deployed, they can do, they can maintain security and all of that. In Tepa, something is happening. Obuasi, it's something happening. Domango, something is happening. And so I think talking about the elections and the security management of it, yes, the police and the election security task force had a role to play. I think to some extent, they handled the situations quite well. But the processes relating to the EC, I think is where we have to look at. Because what is the point in saying, carry the ballot boxes from Eastern region to Greater Accra to do recollation, when you have said, if you have any issues, go to court. And indeed, in fact, in this particular case, the people who are affected are the ones who would often even tell people that if you feel you are dissatisfied, you can go to court. So for me, it is the processes by the EC following the rules. And I think that our political parties must also learn to be honest. Samson, in all this, the parties themselves would know who won. But it is about either Takashi or let's go through these processes and possibly we can have our way through. Because if declaration had been made at the coalition center at the constituency, that is what we all have to go by. If you are dissatisfied, go to court.
Yeah, but you know what that is, and you and I know it. The parties, their calculation is this. Once the declaration is done, regardless how you got the declaration done, your candidates will be sworn in on the 7th in Parliament. And then whoever is aggrieved will go to court. Hopefully, their prayer is that the court process will drag. And then by the time, if that person is successful, by the time they get to come to Parliament, if it does happen, they would have been able to get the numbers they need to do whatever they want. And so that is part of the plan. But some are asking, this is the NDC that regardless of what happens, they will still have the 2/3 majority that they need to do just about anything. So shouldn't they be the ones calming down? At least they also have the presidency with in excess of 1.6 million votes. Historic.
Well, Samson, I think that in any case, if the NDC won 275 out of 276, I don't think that would be a reason to say that, in this particular constituency, we know we won, but we already have so much, and therefore let's forgo it. I don't think that will happen. For me, it's about what reflects the true will and wishes of the people who voted. And at all costs, we must pursue what the truth is. And that is why I believe that the courts must also put in place mechanisms to be able to expedite processes. No parliamentary election dispute should go beyond 3 months. And within 3 months, it is possible to have cases dispensed of, and then the true will of the people will prevail.
All right.
I mean, if we follow the processes and the rules, I think things will be fine. But the parties themselves know sometimes, we didn't win here, but we are trying to just bulldoze our way through. And
all right.
the EC must not allow those things to happen.
Thank you. We'll quickly come and discuss the vandalism that has followed, and then the transition process that is beginning to show discordance. We'll quickly come to that. But now let me go to Dr. Anesedu Jemfi, of the chairman of the National Peace Council. So what we knew was that Ablekuma North, in Sawama Dwejiri, Dome Kwabenya, Techiman South, Suhum, Tema Central, Ahafuano North, Ahafuano Southwest, and Akwetia were the places where the troubles, the coalition issues came up, and therefore the EC needed to sanitize the process by bringing it to the Tesano in Accra. We have heard the NDC, of course, as far as they are concerned, Ablekuma North is no problem because there's a declaration. As far as they are concerned, Dome Kwabenya, there's a declaration. As far as they are concerned, Tema Central, there's a declaration. Akwetia, where things have changed now, they are not happy about it. So as far as they are concerned, there are only about 3 outstanding and not 9, so to speak. And as we heard from Kofi Adams a while ago, if the EC gazettes the newly recollated victor, the member of the candidate on the NDC's ticket who had earlier been declared at the constituency will also be in Parliament to be sworn in. Rev, how do we resolve these matters? How are you helping the EC? How are you helping the parties to resolve these matters amicably so that the beautiful thing we have done for ourselves as a country does not end up, these don't end up blighting it?
Samson, I think we have a few critical issues to look at. One is the constituencies where the declaration wasn't done. So that is one. 2, where declaration was done. And 3, where declaration was done, but then they are claiming that they were forced to do it. So these are the 3 critical issues we're looking at. In places where the declaration wasn't done, I think it should be easier for them to go back and look at what is the best way to handle this. The other issue is that in the places where the declaration was done, the questions we've been asking is, were figures given such that the EC can actually have the figures which can be gazetted to indicate that this person won this polling station by this number? And it's clear, the figures are there. This person got this person got that. Those figures are there. So those are the critical issues we've been asking ourselves. And how do we go around these things? One of the suggestions we've given was, can we bring the parties together? The EC, the parties, the National Election Security Task Force, and possibly the National Peace Council, just to observe. Can we talk about these things so that we can shorten it instead of going to court? For us as the Peace Council, once a case goes to court, we pull back and we wait for the adjudication of the case before we determine what to do. But we thought that if these things could be done, there could be some mediation to find a critical consensus between the parties. And initially in our release, we talked about IPAC. The intention was not a full IPAC, but those parties who were contested in those constituencies that we are dealing with? Can we bring all of them together to determine what can be done? The other thing is that by 7 p.m. from the NDC's position, they knew their position in terms of the results. By 11 p.m., MPP knew their position in terms of the results. That is an indication that these two parties, even though we are claiming that some of the pink sheets are burnt or whatever, they have certain copies. And if we really want to be honest, both of them must produce the copies that their IT teams have so that we put them together and move on as a country. We can't keep on dribbling ourselves because there's certainly, even if we ask people in polling stations to give us evidence, we will get them. We compare them to see are they the correct figures. They were supposed to have pasted them. I'm hearing comments that they were not pasted at the police. If they were pasted, the people took pictures. These figures should have been available for us to verify. But I think that there are some means by which we should be able to pull all of these things together to determine what the actual position is. Right. Instead of going around to say that the papers are, the documents are not there, the parties don't have it, and so that's it. The other people have it. And I believe that the IT teams of both parties must have the results.
Right. So, Rev, and by 11:30-ish, or was it around 10:50-ish, I got to know that the NDC had collated in excess of 36,000 of the 40,000 plus, polling stations. So that will be helpful. Now, I think Kofi Adams admits here that for places where the collation has not happened, it shouldn't be difficult for that to be done, except that as far as they are concerned, that will bring the number of the outstanding places to only 3. And the MPP may not agree with that. So practically, how are you doing that? How are you pushing at the level of the EC, at the level of the parties, to make sure they come together? At least if we're able to clear the 3 and there's even some outstanding, we know progress has been made.
Well, some discussion has been going on between the EC, the police, and the parties. We haven't come to the full consensus yet. As at yesterday, we were still monitoring the situation at the police training depot school to see what the outcome was until the evening when we were told that the EC had pulled out of the place. The discussions are still ongoing, and we are hoping that between the next few hours or days, we should be able to find some consensus in terms of these things.
All right.
That is if the parties don't push the issues, all of them, to court. So far, what we have seen in terms of the suit has to do with Nsawam. The others, we haven't seen them yet. And so we assume that only Nsawam Adwajiri is the one that is in contention. But if they push it to cover all the rest, then that will mean that we will have to pull back until the adjudication process is.
But why are you not? Why are you leaving out matters that have already gone to court? Those that have gone to court, you could also help to find, mediation around them. And now our court rules, which originally we made them in 2004, that said only commercial cases are amenable to pre-trial settlement. We changed the rules recently, and the rules now allow for all cases to be amenable to settlement. So even though they have filed matters in court, you still should be able to speak to them to agree to resolve it. Once they resolve it, the court will adopt the resolution.
Well, we will keep on trying. We hope that the parties will give in for us to mediate in this process. Yesterday, a lot of discussion was going on. We told them, well, look, let's sleep over it, reflect, and find a way out. So today, we will still continue with our negotiation to see how far we can.
You don't see the potential of any difficulties on the 7th, where Parliament will be inaugurated?
Well, our hope and prayer is that this issue should be resolved as quickly as possible. on another platform, I was telling the media that, look, business people are looking at doing business for Christmas. They want to sell their goods. They want to make money at the end of the year. And we are not doing all these things overlooking the economics of the country. So people want to do business. We have a project in this country where around Christmas, a lot of people from the diaspora come in to celebrate Christmas here. This tension does not help us economically. And I think that all of us must begin to look at that bit of the country and not look at it only in terms of politics. What does it do in terms of our economics? Now, the tension also will affect the celebration of Christmas. And those in the entertainment industry will also have their effects. People will feel like, I don't want to go out because I don't want to experience all of these things. So the economics bit of our country must also be in focus. So while we're doing all of these negotiations on the side, we are also looking at the benefits of having a peaceful country and allowing people to celebrate the festival that's ahead of us, and also for people to make their money.
Right. All right, thank you very much. And Rhoda, we know that you were catching a flight. If you are still with us, let's deal with this briefly, and we'll bring Rev in again. This one, gentlemen and lady, we want to be very brief about it, as well as the very last issue that we will look at. So we know that violence has erupted in various places. There has been looting of the NADMO office and destruction of property at Tepa. In Sunyani, there have been attacks on the Metro Mass staff. In Ablikma West, vandalism of Esla Owusu Ekufu's home and office. The police say they are investigating all of these matters. In Damango, EC office set ablaze, arson. That's the name of the crime. Tamale, theft from school feeding warehouse. Awutu Senya East, shooting, leading to 1 death and 1 injured. In Nyankpala, shooting led to 1 being killed. Okaikwe South, party agent found with a gun and it was taken away. We'll find out, well, if the gun is registered and it's not used wrongly, what will be the problem? Ayen Swano, EC office, bent. We have had Ghana Gas, angry mob besiege the company. And then the Ghana Ports and Harbors, the mob also invaded the place. So, of course, President Mahama was compelled to issue a statement on his acceptance speech decrying the situation, and then subsequently also issued another statement asking people to calm down and not to take the law into their own hands. Yes, Rhoda, these are like, it's like a ritual. After every election, we are seeing these things. How do we resolve them? Of course, I will not forget about the Catholic priest in the Oti region. In Kwanta, yes, in Kwanta. Very sad spectacle. I watched the videos and they were slapping the priest. And because they are priests, initially when you're watching, you ask yourself, but why are they not replying? Why are they not beating back? And then later you find out that they are priests. That's why they were calm. Even when they were being slapped, they don't reply. And now they realize that they are priests. They were not doing anything wrong. And these party agents claim that they felt they were stealing, public property. Yes, Rhoda.
Yeah, Samson, in the last election, the producer set an objective for itself to track the post-election violence and the prosecution of people involved or alleged perpetrators. 2 points or so that.
Okay, so your line is getting bad. Hello, Rhoda. Unfortunate, and Rhoda actually has to leave us so she catches her flight. But maybe because you bring a security angle, let me start with the 2 Kofis, starting with IKA.
Okay. I'll say thank you for the opportunity, but just 2 seconds on the previous issue that I think that Madam Mensa, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, I'm speaking to you from this platform. Do us the honors of just following the law. Do us the honors of just following the law. Don't do otherwise, because the consequences will be dire. And so you should just follow the law. Samson, I don't support any form of violence, no matter what. And it's quite unfortunate that especially the Catholic priests who were subjected to that level of what? Torture. I must admit, around this time, the weather in that area is really bad. And so even if a slight cane is applied on you, you feel it. And for those heavy slaps, as we watch on the video, being descended heavily on this place was for me quite unfortunate. But the district engineer who was with them also failed them. Because in matters like this, we have what we call logbooks. Equipment like that don't move without logging, and you carry it along. So it should have been very possible to provide detailed information as to why the equipment was moving from where it's been parked to another place in such a period. Unfortunately, they equally also didn't have enough documentation, but still no excuse for visiting such heavy-handedness on the persons. You could at best have called in the police or redirect them to a police station and not subject them to any physical beating or molestation. And that is an unfortunate incident, and my sympathies go out to the priest who suffered, especially for the project for which they were going to commit those equipment to.
Right.
They're
actually helping the society.
Helping the society, helping the community.
And they've used their own money
to pay for
at the district for these things.
And that is allowed for the drip equipment that you could hire for a fee and use it. So they've paid. It's not like they just went for the equipment for nothing. But, well, you can understand also when materials are getting lost in the manner that they get lost sometimes. It calls for a few concerns, but that's unfortunate. In the case of Tepa.
So there were a number of statements. There was an apology that was issued, I think at the level of the party to these missionaries. And then I've also seen a video where there's a leadership that has gone there.
The party chairman of the NDC and some senior persons were there, Prosper Akamani, and I thank them. According to the priest, the MP himself also spoke to them and assured them that he was getting back to the constituency by yesterday. And when he does so, he was going to also visit. And the Catholic Diocese of Jasikan also issued a statement condemning the developments, the attack on the missionaries, and they are asking that there should be immediate action to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure the safety and security of all citizens, particularly these foreign missionaries. Taking the needed action with regard to this incident will serve as a deterrent to undisciplined youth determined to cause confusion by taking advantage of the post-election period. So what would you say, that the apology is enough? The matter should end there? Well, I would have wished that it ends there if only the medical bills of these persons this place is taken care of. But I think also that a certain level of...
You can see on your shots...
someone was asking, why were if the priest had worn the cassock, it would have been easy to identify them also. And I said, well, they are taking equipment and this type of equipment to site. So how are they going to go to the site also in Kasok? Possibly this is the best they could appear, and so it was something that was unfortunate, and I think that.
So hold on briefly for me, and that is why not only our laws globally, the criminal law is that a suspect or even a person who has been charged before a court is presumed innocent until and unless they themselves have admitted to their crime, not in the public, admitted their crime in a court, not a court of a radio, but a court of competent jurisdiction, or they have been convicted as such. That's why, sometimes you just see and you think this person is wrong, but you never know. Yeah. Later on, it will show that they are actually not wrong. Let's quickly listen to Bosman Asari of the Electoral Commission. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Samson.
Yes. Briefly, we'll need you to explain something to us. Why are you recollating when your law does not allow that?
Samson, thank you again for this opportunity. When you look at CI 127, Regulation 43, it specifies the procedure to follow. The 43 starts by saying that each candidate is supposed to have 2 agents for the collation when it comes to the parliamentary elections. Very, very important. And from there, it lists the procedures to be followed. And what the Commission has said very clearly is that in terms of our collation, all these processes were not followed. So literally, the collation we expect to take place in some of these places, they actually didn't take place. And once what they did was inconsistent with CI 127, Regulation 43, then the Commission has the responsibility to ensure that all the things that were done which were not proper are corrected.
What are some of the things? What are some of the things that were done which are not proper?
What?
Some of the things which were. What are some of the things which were done that are not proper, for which you have to recollate?
For example, in one of the constituencies, I think it's either Okaikwe Central. The declaration was done per the CI. It talks about you put together all the polling station results for each of the polling stations and you do the collation. In that particular constituency, for example, if my memory serves is right, they have almost 141 polling stations. The declaration was done based on either 110 or 111. So literally about 30 polling stations results were not part of the declaration. Apart from that, we also have reports of, I know you've seen the report by our Tema district officer, where the declaration was done even at the Tema Regional Police Command, and it was not even done by the person accredited by the Commission to do that. Apart from that, there are other places where it was done at a knife point. So the steps indicated in the law were not followed. And the Commission strongly believes that once those things were not followed, then it wasn't the collation we had expected our officers to do. And I wanted to add that in terms of the selection of the collation centers too, all these things were done in consultation with the Ghana Police Administration.
Okay,
so
example, but you hold on, just hold on there for me. Just hold on.
Selected in consultation.
Yes, Dr. Asari, hold on. So this is the same CI 127 that was used for the 2020 elections, correct?
Yes, please. Yes.
When the NDC made a complaint about Techiman South in 2020, your reply was that once it has been done, it cannot be done again. They should go to court.
Yes, Samson.
Why has that changed?
No, I think, Samson, the contexts are so different. Let's put things in perspective. In Techiman, our officers, the returning officers, our district officers, they did their work. And when they finished, we received a report from them. And the report that came to us and upon our further investigation indicated that they followed the procedure specified in law. In what we are witnessing now, the reports from our officers are completely different from what occurred in Techiman. And as an institution, we think that let's do the right. Once we do the right thing, and people are. Let me make something clear. We don't care about the outcome of the election. We don't care who is winning here, who is winning there. What we care about is to protect the integrity of the process. And that process has been clearly specified in law. So the commission has that responsibility to ensure that all the right things specified in the law, they are done. In Techiman, the report that came to us was very, very clear. In this instance, it's not the same.
Okay.
That's why I was asking the question whether you've chanced on the report by our district officer.
Okay,
you can see clearly different from what transpired in Techiman.
Okay. Are you, in your list of the constituencies that you have to recollate, Damango is not one of them, right?
No, Damango is not one of them.
Why not?
Damango, I need to, there was a problem there. And the commission instructed the regional director to take over. So once the commission instructed, the regional director was empowered by the commission to do the needful. And that was actually done.
Okay, so the regional director took the place of the returning officer to do the declaration.
Because the commission authorized the regional director to do so.
Okay. You mentioned Tema Central.
Yes.
The person who did it is a returning officer, but from Tema West. Is that it?
Oh, that's not right. It's not a returning officer for Tema West.
But who is he?
It's a staff of the Electoral Commission, but not a returning officer.
Okay, so he's not empowered to do a declaration.
He's not empowered to do a declaration. Apart from he not being empowered to do a declaration, where the declaration took place, the processes, it talks about having two agents, putting all the results together. All those processes were not followed.
In Tesano, where you are putting the results together and having the declaration done, is it being done by the constituency returning officers for those constituencies?
Yes, please. We have all the constituency returning officers. So I think 3 days ago we did Fantia Pamnof. Apart from Fantia Pamnof, too, we had Suhum and Akutia. And Sawam began, but they couldn't complete.
So the NDC has faulted these processes that you are going through because it points to the fact that you cannot point to any portion of the law that empowers you as a commission to change the rules midway the way you are doing them by authorizing a director to do the declaration.
I've just indicated that CI 127 Regulation 43, which is about...
No, I know Regulation 43.
Everything is there.
Regulation 43 is just about the returning officer and his duties. My question is, if you ask a director to do it, you ask a director in Damango to do the declaration on what authority, which law? That's what they want to know.
They want to know on which law we...
Because it is the returning officer who has to do it. So why do you ask a director there to do it?
At the time, the returning officer was incapacitated. I think you heard our office in Damango was bent down.
Mm-hmm.
The returning officer was incapacitated. We were told he was hospitalized in one of the hospitals in Tamale, and the process had to continue. And it's the same thing we are doing in Tesano. What came to us was that the constituency collation centers were not conducive for the process to continue. So in consultation with the Ghana Police Service, and for security purposes, it was agreed that let's come to Tesano where the police can assure us of security.
The accusation you face now, the allegation you face now is that by the processes so far, what the NDC believes has already been declared, you are now overturning them in favor of the NPP when you could simply say that you could simply repeat what you said to the NDC in 2020, that if any NPP person is aggrieved by the declaration, whether it was done under duress, whether it was done by someone who is not an officer, whatever it is, they must go to court because court is the only place to resolve that issue. You are not doing that, and therefore you seem to be supporting, aiding the NPP to gain more seats.
I think I made an earlier point that the Electoral Commission as an institution doesn't care who wins presidential, who wins parliamentary. That's not part of our mandate. Our mandate is to ensure that the processes leading to the election of the president, the processes leading to the elections of our parliamentarians, they follow what have been specified in law. So for the Electoral Commission, we have sworn an oath to do that. So what we are basically saying is that we, so far out of the 12 which the commissioner said we'll be looking at, that means 12 from the 276, that's 264 or so. All of them, we've never had any complaints. But for this particular one, now I think something, I don't know if you saw in one of the footages, I don't know if it's either Ablekuma North or even Okankwe Central. You saw members of a particular party going the return of say that, and what the commission is saying is that once those processes are not followed, that is not declaration in the work of the Electoral Commission. So we believe that let the right things be done. Once we do the right things and anyone
right. So now you have been
you can use the legal process.
Now you have been compelled. Now you have been compelled. Now you have been compelled to halt the process.
Yes.
So what do we do with the rest?
No, we'll come back to them. We'll come back to them. So as far as we are concerned, those other places, no MP has been selected because and no collation has been completed over there. So those are, and as we speak now, we don't know who has won even in these places. We are going to put everything together, and that's the process which started, I think, about 3 days ago, and three of them were completed.
Including
the others are still outstanding.
including in Sawam, where you have been served with an injunction application.
I have not seen anything like that, and I was at the office yesterday. I didn't see any injunction application, and I don't think there is a judge who has granted any injunction application against the East.
Yeah, the injunction applications, when they are served on you on notice, they don't have to be granted. You have to stop until it has been heard. Otherwise, you would have overreached the court.
That's your opinion. So we also engage our lawyers, and they will let us know what the commission.
It's not my opinion. It is the law, and the EC has followed this in previous circumstances.
So we'll get a word from our lawyers about it.
Okay. All right.
I heard one of your panelists talking about EC being responsible for election security. I want to place it on record that the EC is not in charge of security when it comes to elections.
No,
we are not part of a police deployment plan. They don't tell us what they do. Everything about security rests with the Ghana Police Service. And
right, that matter has been resolved. My brief question for you for a brief answer before you go is the Peace Council is seeking to promote mediation, call it arbitration, whatever. Use ADR processes. Are you amenable to those, or you will simply go ahead after you have announced you halted, you simply go ahead because you believe that you are doing the right thing?
Oh, no, the commission is amenable to anything that will ensure the integrity, protecting the integrity of our process. And you know, as I said, the law is very, very clear. And you know, we don't live in a jungle where those who are powerful may decide to do whatever they like. Our processes are embedded in law. And the commission doesn't want to set any precedent which in the future will come back to bite all of us as a country. And we think that once the laws, any process that will lead to ensuring that the laws governing our elections are followed, we are ready. And we as an institution, we don't exist for ourselves. We are there for the people of Ghana. So whatever law mandating our work, we will ensure that we apply them according to the letter.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on. Before you go, Kofi Adams has a question.
Before you go, clearly, Dr. Bosman, yesterday you sat to the left of Mr. Tete, your colleague, a deputy chair for the commission, when he addressed the press conference. And at that press conference, even at a point, you sought to provide him with information to use, where you suggested that if 2 polling stations were added, it was going to even change he ignored that. He mentioned clearly in that press conference that the declaration that was done in Tema Central was done by Tema West returning officer. Now you are suggesting something different. Is the EC truly prepared? Please.
I work at the Electoral Commission. I'm speaking on authority.
And I'm saying that
the one you are saying is not the returning officer.
I am asking a question.
The permanent staff of the Electoral Commission.
Dr. Bosman Asari, yesterday you addressed a press conference. The information you put out yesterday is what I'm speaking to. 2, you also claim that and quoted Regulation 43. Yes, agents must be present. But you should also advertise your mind to Regulation 48, especially 2, that says the absence, listen to this, Regulation 48.2, the non-attendance of the candidate or the polling agent or counting agent of the candidate at the time and place shall not invalidate the act or thing done. So the mere fact that Regulation 43 talks about who qualifies to be present, their absence at a gazetted location for collation does not invalidate the process. So you are completely wrong. You same commissioner. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Let me make it clear. We don't gazette.
And I'm saying that. Let me finish. Let me finish. You advertise them.
When agents are not there, it does not invalidate. But that's not what transpires.
You advertise them. You advertise them for our attention. Again, this same commission, when Dr. Dufour went to court, without the court admitting his injunction, you said the mere service on you of an injunction process meant that you were not going to go ahead to supervise the NDC's what? Primaries. Now today you are saying a mere service is not a court granting an injunction.
He says he would get advice.
And I'm saying that they have utilized this same commission. This same commission have done something in the past. This is what position. They have been so partisan. You are being partisan. I put it to you that you have been partisan. Dr. Bosman Asari, you are being partisan.
Thank you.
You are aiding the MPP to take seats they didn't win.
We'll take a break here.
You are a member of parliament. You don't need to say what.
That's what you are doing.
We'll take a break here. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Leaders were here. I don't want to mention their names. They themselves said that they know Ano has won. The NDC in Sawam constituency executives, they know that Ano Dompre has won. They told us that if the process continues and Ano is declared, their foot soldiers would kill them. I mean, to use a word, their own words. All right? My point is that if you are a leader and you cannot be bold to tell your people the bitter truth, then you are not a good leader. You get my point? Why would you deliberately frustrate a process because you think that you've lost? Look at what they did yesterday. When we were supposed to conduct the collation, they said their computers were gone dead.
Anyway, in Sawama Drajiri, it's on an injunction. So that's Afenyo marking there. And many people on social media are just saying, he should go to court. He should stop talking. This program is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. DB Industries, Roofing, Papa Fie. Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Syntex Tanks, it's strong, it's tough. Activa International Insurance, our clients, our passion. So, gentlemen, let's keep to the violence aftermath and the transition issues that are coming up. And it was Kofi Adams who was speaking. We just narrowed to the missionaries, but there are other... Yeah, go ahead.
Quite worried because it happened within my region. And
right.
You know, the Catholic Church, the Jessican diocese cover the entire region. And
okay.
So it's a matter that is of concern to me. But I'm happy with how it has been handled, the involvement of leadership and the subsequent engagement. I believe that it will resolve a number of things. But it's also a wake-up call for us that during periods such as this, and with such machinery, we must also be quite careful how we move it, and move it with the appropriate documentation and correct arrangement, so such things will not befall people. But I agree that no suspect whatsoever should be manhandled. You get a suspect, citizen arrest can be effected, but send the person to the police in the way and manner you pick the person. Quite a number of persons have lost their lives. I think at the last count 4, and all these persons are our members who have suffered in Yankpala, in Tepa, our vice chairman for Efutu.
Yeah, Kumadan situation too.
Kumadan, yeah. Our vice chairman in Efutu was actually taken and sent somewhere, beaten. I hear his fingers.
Afia Makin said that is bogus.
How is it bogus? There's evidence of what had happened to the person that we see, images of him and everything, and you say he's bogus. He did that to himself? Or what? Is he saying that it did not happen? You see, this is what annoys people.
That is his constituency.
He
won by such a huge margin.
I'm saying that,
what is the need for all the fighting going on there? Well, of course,
but before the elections, didn't you hear what Cynthia Morrison was saying? That he was moving votes from their constituencies to his constituency. Didn't you hear those complaints? So if you move people that other candidates do not know and have access to, and you are able to move them back to come in and vote for you, you will surely be winning by such a margin.
They must have registered there.
Of course, that's what they did. He moved them during the transfer. That was the complaint that were coming from candidates, or his own party candidates around such places.
All right.
So I think violence we have.
Okay.
So, but as for transitional issues, I'm worried that the governing side or the outgoing government side thinks that we should not speak to recruitment, massive recruitments and promotions that are happening now. It is absolutely wrong for such a thing to happen.
The government the government's tenure, the president's tenure, ends midnight.
Well, it's true
6th of January.
It ends midnight.
Yes.
All those things that they are doing now, I'm sending a signal to them. You have 6-month probationary period, and after that, we'll have a right to take a decision.
Domelevo was appointed.
And I'm saying that
19th December. 19th December. Sraj persons were appointed after you lost elections.
Samson,
so that's the question people are asking. What is the problem?
I have no problem with the appointment of 1 or 2, like the deputy Sraj boss that has been appointed. I have no problem whatsoever. But we are talking about massive recruitments that are happening all of a sudden. Some of it after the elections, some just around the elections.
Governance has not come to a halt.
Well, it has not come to a halt, but we will go into it. Okay. Just as it happened that National Service Directors who were appointed way back in October were asked to go home. There will be nothing wrong in dealing with such situations that are happening. It was...
You mean October 2016?
October 2016.
All right.
You see, it's not for anything that the transitional law says that 30 days before the date set for presidential elections, handing over notes must be submitted to the Administrator General. Because we know that within that period, you must not do any massive things that will distort the economy. Because part of the things you hand over are economic issues and what have you. So you've presented handing over notes to the Administrator General. Now you are taking huge actions that could affect
the Felix, who is a spokesperson, Felix Kwachifosu, who issued a statement on behalf of the Mahames team, said that there had been agreement that all ongoing significant payments, recruitment, and other such activities must be submitted to the transition team for consideration on a case-by-case basis. But the government's team spokesperson Fatima Abubakar also issued a statement and said there was no such agreement. As far as what is going on is legitimate, it must go on, and the baton will be passed on the 7th of January. Yes, Kofi, the issue of violence and the transition matters that are coming up. Maybe they have opportunity. The Transition Act, they need to test. They can pass and say, maybe this month's to election, there should not be any appointments or recruitments.
I was going to go there. That's the shorter thing. Listen, guys, during the NDC transition to MPP, the same things were said by the other side. You have a situation where even the same words are being used. Here is the solution. Include in the transition law a clear provision that immediately after a certain time, elections, no major contract or appointment or action may be taken, and define major. Where there is a clear need for it to be done, it must be done with the inclusion of the new government. You have enough lawyers to craft that and put it in the law, period. Because they play these political games with us. We, the citizens, sit back. They come in and they take advantage.
Right.
Violence is a major problem. We need to understand it. And then
the police has arrested in excess of 125 or so.
It's pressure on everybody. Listen, here's the thing. Political violence is in our culture. We started it from Kwame Nkrumah. Overthrow him, demonize him, destroy his statues, everything. All the way through Jerry Rawlings. Every time. It's in our culture. We need to understand it. Even in a democratic dispensation like this, somebody goes, MPP time it happened, and this time it is happening. Now, because it's in our culture, we need to reverse it. I am happy, and I said earlier, we have two fine gentlemen, and they have made the right statements. But now, the tone of the body, the political organizations must themselves express that this is not something we agree with. Then now, how do you deal with it? The law enforcement agencies must drop down heavily on these people, because of the cultural thing, to break it. And they must be firmly supported by the political parties to send that message that it will not be counted. These are basic crimes. And let us deal with them to give an example and break it. I'm saying all this is because if we don't take a certain, determined effort to deal with it, we will not break this kind of culture.
Right.
We have politicians come in and then ship out ATS, and we, the citizens, in anger, support them. They only serve themselves. And we are left alone to fend for ourselves.
Thank you. Colonel.
Well, thanks a lot. I think, if you may allow me, the EC must understand that a lot of the violence that we're seeing arise from failures on how they've managed the system. Exactly. Therefore, even if they are not directly responsible for security, they take responsibility for some of the violence and the destruction.
Yes.
Now, I want Ghanaians to appreciate that what is going on, or the violence that has occurred, can be explained in this way. First of all, there has been political vigilantism. Nyankpala and Ewutu-Senya East and Ebuakwa North are clear examples of people who are politically exposed, indeed who are even members of parliament, have resorted to the use of violence by their bodyguards and so on and so forth, upon instructions that they must do A, B, C, D. So political violence has not been resolved. Now, the Ebuakwa North one is very interesting because one of the culprits, one Mr. Ernest Yeboah, a.k.a. Double, was involved in Ayawaso, West Rogon. Reference what the Emil Short's commission said. This man has not suffered any consequences. Then he goes back, how many years later? 2019, 2024, goes to Ebuakwa North, and then he shoots again. I think they shot 2 people. Why is this happening? It's happening because the state itself, i.e. the government, has violated the Constitution by recruiting persons through dubious means and giving them arms at the national security outfit. And national security is supposed to be a civilian establishment, doing policy analysis, implementation, advice, planning, whatever it is. So that's one source of the violence. Now, this other part, which is attracting a lot of propaganda, initially we thought that it was the NDC hoodlums who were causing the violence. Now now there is evidence, empirical evidence that no, there are MPP members aggrieved, disillusioned, disenchanted, who want their fair share of whatever the cake is before going out of power. So when they went to the passport office, for instance, they were going to look for jobs. When they went to Ghana Gas, they were going to look for jobs, or the harbor for that matter. Now, however, in reaction to this, idea of what I call the Wuncheni philosophy. A section of the population, maybe predominantly NDC, now goes to stop the loot. You know, and then you end up with this kind of situation where then, of course, you have mobs or criminals also cashing in.
Okay.
Now, we need to remember that since 2000, and Nanka Bruce's case is very fresh on our minds. And I've suggested that very soon we might see people going to the Flagstaff House or Jubilee because their governments have come to power.
Oh.
You know, we need to find a way of resolving some of these
and that's a perfect note on which to end. Let me bring in Sule. Sule briefly on this, and then we get Dr. Edujemfi, you know, to bring all of us together.
I think Colonel has really said it all in terms of ensuring that the rule of law is what should govern us at all times. It's not about whose party is in power. If the rule of law works, even if you are in power and you do the wrong thing, the law will deal with you. Again, I think we've tolerated this whole thing about election violence and describing it as if it is not a crime. It's almost like, well, this is just an election violence. Every elections there will be violence, or every elections there is violence. And it's often said and described as if it is not a crime. I remember in the lead up to the 2016 elections, the police was very clear that if, for example, you go and pick up a ballot box after elections, they are not going to treat you in the context of, elections offenses. They are going to treat you as a criminal. And I think that is where we have to get to. Rather than, people shooting and we say, it was related to elections and so on and so forth. That's murder. And people should be dealt with as such. And until we get to the point where whether it's your government that has won or your government that has lost, if you commit a crime, you face the consequences of your crime. 2028 will be at the same point. I don't think that we're going to have a situation where one party will govern Ghana forever. At some point along the line, I'm sure another party would win. Are we going to have the same situation because a different party would have won? So I think, for me, the impunity must stop. The rule of law must work, and people who come to power must have that, confidence to be able to say, look, even though these were my party people, if what they did was wrong, they must be dealt with. For example, when you talked about the issue of the Catholic priests, I think Kofi was trying to say, well, if there is an apology or something like that, trying to shy away from what should really happen. The people who did that must face the consequences of what they did. It's not a question of an apology. Because the next time somebody would do it and think that, well, after it, I can render an apology and go scot-free. I can understand Kofi if he feels that, look, they are my people and I don't want to say the law should deal with them.
Right. Okay.
And that is what should happen. The law must deal with these people. They must be prosecuted.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sule. And Dr. Ernest Edujemfi, thank you also. What should we be doing to make sure that these things do not recur? Also, the transition team, there's supposed to be an advisory council headed by the Speaker of Parliament, then one appointee from the President, one appointee from the President-elect. All these have been done. How do they resolve the differences that is beginning to show up?
Well, first, let me address the political parties and the impasse. As I said earlier on, I believe that both NPP and NDC know the polling stations or the constituencies they won and the ones they lost. For the sake of the peace of this country, can they themselves agree to accept that we lost this, we'll leave it. We won this, we'll pursue it, so that we can have peace? None of them can tell us at the moment that they don't know whether they lost or they won those. They know it. So why are they putting the whole country through this process? So my appeal to them is that, look, let us, for the sake of our country, accept the reality so that we can move on. If we go to court, we will come back to the same point. So why are we taking the country through this? So that is the way my appeal to them. In the case of the transitional team, I think that they need to work together and not be giving us conflicting statements. Once those things continue, it fuels what is going on among the parties themselves, as if we are still fighting. I think that these are honorable men and women, and they have to be careful what information they put out. It must be a united information coming from both ends and not from different sources. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And Kofi, what happened?
About what?
What happened to Baumia?
See, it's easy. Okay, I brought this here.
Let me tell you.
The party is decimated.
Oh, yes.
What's happened?
Let me tell you what.
No. I just need a minute of where our time is up. Yes, Kofi, tell us.
You don't have the time. So
I was fighting blood.
Yes, I was.
I'm not going to be opening book.
No, I'm not. Oh, why are you not letting me do my work?
And ignore the economy, ignore the arrogance.
Samson.
Ignore the environmental
Can I answer my question?
distraction that was going on. They ignored all these and we're just looking at trends, past trends.
No.
Oh, we have got.
Do you agree with those who say this is a vote to punish Akufo-Addo?
Yes.
Well,
And Baumia just suffered.
Samson.
But he was part.
We did this.
At a point, he wanted to take
Why is
himself
this man
out.
answering my
and
question?
speak. All of them wanted to join and describe it
Kofi
as
Adams,
speech.
look here,
We
look here.
refused to accept
Kofi
that
Adams,
he was
Yes,
made.
Kofi Adams.
he's showing us some.
Look here.
As a co-pilot.
Look here. Do you see this? Do you see this?
What?
Do you see?
Yes.
Do you see?
Yes.
Which one is that? Tell us.
Then you
We
were
are not
refusing.
seeing.
They were refusing.
We're not
to
seeing,
admit.
so tell us, what
No,
is
he was
that?
showing
Classified.
56, 41%. 56, 41%.
Let him talk. Let him talk.
I took a principled position. What you see here is research we did in February.
Of this year.
Yes, of this year. That showed us that it looks like President Mahama will win. But without having the time to do it, it was driven by the anger of the Ghanaian people. What I did was to say, drop down from your anger and look at the candidates. I still believe Dr. Baumia is the better candidate. Ghanaians disagree with me. He has won fair and square. I wish President Mahama well. If he succeeds for all of us. But still, Dr. Baumia, for me, was the better candidate.
So on election headquarters, and this is our coverage between now until the inauguration, we will be starting at 8 o'clock. I'm looking forward to host you so that when we start, we'll have a detailed discussions about this.
Yes.
So for those of you who missed today, forgive us, we didn't actually tell you ahead of time because 8 o'clock Saturday, we will begin Newsfile. And this is part of our election headquarters coverage throughout the inauguration because even we have done 4 hours, they are going to ask for more time. Yes, Kana, what did you want to say?
Well, my last word is that there is an obvious best practice or lesson learned. The police not being armed, not carrying arms,
right.
Follow stations,
Wonderful.
saved us a lot of lives.
Yes.
But the lives that have been lost were not caused by the police presence. Secondly, the argument has been vindicated that the military has no role. So going forward, let's keep the military concentrated, assembled, and then let them wait as and when the police, invites them to come in and support.
All right.
Military should never be part of our election security management.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And my guests have been Rhoda Osei Afo, Kofi Bento, Kofi Adams, Suleiman Ibrahima, Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired, Reverend Dr. Ernest Edu-Jenfi, and we began the show at 8 o'clock with Dennis Miracles Abuaje, and the discounts offer by Konati Clothing is still going on. Konati Clothing, you can find them at Adenta Shopping Center, Adenta Down. You can call them 0244-676732. Konati Clothing, what you wear matters. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.